Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Had the Powers of a Daiyoukai from Inuyasha. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Namikaze Mansion. Courtyard. Gatsuga. Kiba and Akamaru hurled themselves at Naruto, who was shrouded in the same chakra aura he had used to defeat them in the preliminaries. Since the pair hadn't eaten food pills before launching their attack, Naruto dialed down the intensity of his aura to keep the playing field even. The Namikaze Lord was once again clad in his gray-black shinobi variant of Sesshomaru's armor. He had requested an extra-large version of the standard-issue flak jacket granted to Chunin and now wore it over his armor's cuirass. The shockwave created when the three combatants clashed was barely contained in the Namikaze Mansion courtyard. Naruto and his opponents were flung in opposite directions as their attacks cancelled each other out. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? That attack was way stronger last time. Kiba smirked. She had started pestering Naruto for a rematch just 2 days after the invasion ended. Naruto refused, citing that he needed to help rebuild Konoha, but after 4 days that excuse stopped holding water. The repairs that could be achieved with elbow grease and minimal construction expertise had almost all been attended to, and he had gained so much practice with the Taju Kage Bushin no Jutsu that his clones now could drop a steel girder on their foot and not vanish. Some parts of the village needed a lot of grunt work that he didn't feel safe leaving to his clones, but those could wait for a few days while Naruto dealt with other things. Like Kiba's increasingly obvious lust for him. Hinata's not going to like this. Naruto cursed for the 8th time. He knew that the Inuzuka tended to imprint on those they thought would make ideal husbands or wives. The reason for this trait was that countless generations of synchronizing with their dog partner's chakra had resulted in permanent alterations to the Inuzuka clan's chakra, which affected certain aspects of their biochemistry. The attachment wasn't as instinctive as the bond that animals form with their parents and close relatives, but it was still very difficult to reverse once it occurred. If Naruto had no intention of ever reciprocating Kiba's feelings, it would be one thing. The Inuzuka clan had ways of forcibly reversing the imprinting process, and Hokage had the authority to order them to do it if he believed the affected shinobi would be better off without the bond. However, Naruto was open to the idea of courting Kiba. It was so long ago now that he doubted that she remembered, but Kiba had once openly called a teacher out on his bullshit when he rigged a practical exam just before Naruto's turn to take it came up. It was the first time one of his classmates had stood up for him, and Naruto had promised himself that he would return the favor if he ever got the chance. Between only going to his official classes 1 day a week until Iruka was his primary teacher and Sito's near-endless training regimen, thanking Kiba had slipped his mind by the time he attended classes consistently. It wasn't anywhere close to how he imagined it, but given how much interest was attached to repaying the debt in question, not shutting Kiba down seemed like the least he could do. Back then, we were competing for the honor of representing Konoha in the finals. Naruto shook his head to get his thoughts back on the sparring match. Now, we're just friends having a spar. My current goal is to teach, not to win. Genin Kiba Inuzuka. Throwing your rank around already, are ya? Then check this out. Kiba flashed through a series of hand seals. Douden. Iwahifu. Earth release. Stone skin, an aura of brown-colored chakra pulsed all over Kiba's body for a few seconds. Once it dissipated, the Inuzuka Hira's skin was slightly darkened, as if someone had smeared a thin layer of dirt all over her. Gatsuga. Kiba and Akamaru put much more chakra into their joint jutsu than before and streaked toward Naruto like a heat-seeking missile. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Naruto quickly spawned a single clone and had it throw him into the air. In the next instant, the human-dog duo made a 20-foot crater in his courtyard. Yikes. Good thing the mansion can repair that on its own. Naruto cringed. How'd you like that, Naruto-kun? Kiba taunted after leaping out of the crater. Kun, is it? Classmates are not. I don't believe that's an appropriate way to address your superior, Kiba-chan. Naruto knew he was letting Kiba get under his skin, but he could let her have the satisfaction of riling him up. After all, he was about to send her to the hospital. Fuden. Tatsumakioroi. Naruto's tornado armor materialized with enough force to nearly suck Akamaru in. As this was still a sparring match, Naruto hadn't used the jutsu's final set of hand seals that would apply wind blades to the miniature twister, but impacting the eye of the tornado would still be like crashing into a brick wall, and the wind pressure would likely injure the dog before then. Luckily, Orochimaru had used chakra to stick to the ground as soon as the tornado manifested. Gatsuga. Kiba poured all her remaining chakra into her jutsu as Naruto launched himself at her and Orochimaru. The collision devastated the courtyard and cracked several bones in Naruto's right hand. Kiba was coughing up blood and Orochimaru bore several lacerations. Are you two okay? Tenten had planned on asking Naruto for help with some of the more complicated maneuvers in one of the Namikaze combat manuals today and was on her way to the young lord's home when she heard a titanic explosion. Running to the epicenter of the blast, she arrived just in time to see Naruto pick himself off the ground. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Naruto created 6 clones to bring Kiba and Orochimaru to the nearest hospital. The black-eyed girl had a very satisfied smile on her face. For some reason, seeing that grin infuriated Tenten. Naruto-kun, the weapon master said in a sing-song voice, I do hope you'll be available to help me with some of these exercises as soon as your arm recovers. Why yes. Tenten-chan. Naruto squeaked. With his natural accelerated healing as a Daiyoukai, he'd be able to appease Tenten by tomorrow afternoon, at the latest. The two had become fast friends after Naruto agreed to train her, and he had no desire to compromise their friendship. Friendship? Really, Naruto-kun? Kurama rebuked as Tenten marched away. Yeah, friendship. After all, there's no way Tenten-chan loves, oh, Kami. Naruto swore. There's the intellect Sito Dono cultivated. Kurama grinned. I doubt she realizes it herself yet, but Tenten-chan has a crush on you. Your training sessions before the finals helped, but what truly cemented it was the brutality of Neji's execution. During the match, I felt intense feelings of vindication from Tenten-chan. Neji must have wronged her deeply for her to feel as she did. Great. Just great. Naruto moaned. And like Kiba-chan, I don't think I have it in me to turn her down when she confesses. She's just way too fun to be around. And the dancer's grace she demonstrates when performing your clan's techniques to perfection has nothing to do with it, I'm sure. The strongest tailed beast twisted the proverbial kunai. This conversation is over. Naruto severed the mental link, but the damage had been done. Naruto would have to be in a very good mood to admit it out loud, but he found Hinata's movements as she used the Juken extremely enticing. Tenten's use of the Namikaze combat forms evoked a similar response. He'd done his best to lock his attraction to the weapon master in a chest and throw the key away, but Kurama had just smashed the lock and ripped the top of the chest off its hinges. There was no going back now. Knowing that if he put it off 1 second later he'd never hear the end of it, Naruto made his way to the Hyuga compound to inform his fiancée of the 2 new candidates for his harem. As a noble, I have the right to drag this out over any number of dates over 2 years. That'll give me, and, especially, Hinata, enough time to get to know Kiba-chan and Tenten-chan. Naruto felt like he was representing himself at a murder trial as a Hyuga guard informed Hiyashi of his visit. Streets of Konoha. While Naruto was presenting his case to Hinata, Sasuke was doing his best not to stumble as he made his way, blindfolded, to the Uchiha clan compound. The blindfold was Ino's idea. She had no intention of allowing Sasuke's childhood trauma to get in the way of what she had planned. Sasuke agreed with the sentiment but detested the idea of being led through Konoha's streets like an invalid. Not even the Sharingan is a match for Ino-chan's puppy dog eyes. Sasuke mused. He and Ino had made this trek enough times for him to memorize the route leading to the site of his burned-down house. Ino's gambit had worked. The last Uchiha felt none of the dread or grief he usually suffered from when visiting his first home. As he neared the site where his house once stood, the scent of flowers dominated his nose. Ino had left his side, and the wolf Hanyu tore the blindfold off his face. What greeted him was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. All traces of his old house were gone. In their place stood a circular garden divided into several rings of flowers. The largest, outermost ring consisted of blue irises representing renewal. Between this ring and the next, a ring half as thick as the outer ring holding violet blue bluebells symbolizing hope stood between the irises, and a ring with 2 types of flowers that was as thick as the outer ring. Near the bluebells, violet chrysanthemums that embodied compassion were planted. The second half of the middle ring was composed of pale violet lilacs, again symbolizing hope. After this, another half as thick ring consisted of white daffodils with pale yellow centers, another flower that represents renewal. The final ring, again as thick as the outer ring, was made of violet-red orchids, flowers that personify love. Within the last ring, centered exactly where Sasuke's bedroom once stood, was a circle with 2 flowers. The vast majority were red tulips, another flower indicative of love, but 3 sets of white snapdragons, which embody the will to overcome all obstacles, had been planted around the very center of the circle in patterns identical to the Sharingan's Tomo. Sasuke's tears flooded his face in great rivers. He barely retained consciousness as a paradigm shift occurred in his brain. Never again would he be haunted by nightmares of what occurred on that horrible night. The pain was still there and would remain until Itachi was dealt with, but the despair that had accompanied it for so many years was gone, never to return. I can't take all the credit. Ano's words caused her lover to turn his gaze away from the beautiful flowers. If Sakura hadn't pitched in, this garden would have taken weeks to plant. Channeling chakra into the seeds of all these flowers to accelerate their growth without shortening their lifespan takes way more chakra control than I have at the moment. Don't sell yourself short, Ino. Sakura chimed in from behind Sasuke. I've never done anything like this before and would have screwed up hundreds of times if you weren't there to monitor the whole thing. Like I said, I can't take all the MMPPHHHH. Ano's words were cut short when Sasuke slammed his lips against hers. In the next heartbeat, she returned the kiss with fiery passion seconds before embracing her boyfriend. The two were locked like that for what seemed to them as hours. A thick trail of saliva joined their faces as they pulled away from each other. Before Sakura could even voice her demand to be next, Sasuke tackled her to the ground and launched kisses all over her face before giving her mouth the same treatment as Ano's. The Yamanaka heiress didn't have the heart to reprimand them for ruining the garden. She was too happy for her best friend at the moment to care. The next day, Konoha Academy Auditorium. I am Sito. Some of you know me as a savior, others as the new head librarian, but my main duty here is to serve as Iruka-sensei's assistant. Aside from a very subtle pulse of divine will that allowed her voice to reach all in the room and informed the students she had rescued during the invasion of her new form, the goddess of sea monsters was the currently perfect picture of a human woman. My 3 associates will also be helping Iruka-sensei. With a hand gesture, the Gorgons walked onto the stage from the waiting room to the left of the auditorium. At Iruka's request, the Gorgons were currently using their magic to disguise their snake hair as human locks. Medusa's hair appeared black, Uriel's was blonde, and Steno's was red. They were now wearing personalized variants of the white robes they worn had during the invasion. The Gorgons' previous robes were sleeveless, hung from their shoulders, and came down to their ankles. Their current attire, while still sleeveless, stopped just below their knees. Medusa wore a black robe with gold bands at the hem and neck, secured with a gold-colored sash. Uriel wore an all-blue robe with a black sash, and Steno wore an all-red robe with a silver sash. The Gorgons also now wore dark brown sandals similar in style to Konoha's shinobi sandals. Given that the academy is currently very understaffed, classes with hundreds of students will have to take place in this auditorium 3 times a day until the staffing crisis is resolved. Iruka spoke into his podium's microphone. With Konoha at a near wartime alert level, there's no telling how long this will take. Please bear with us as we figure out how best to adapt to these difficult circumstances. If you have any ideas on how to improve the current teaching regimen, don't hesitate to speak up. All suggestions will be given fair consideration. As none of the students, old or new, had any recommendations at the moment, Iruka and Sito continued their summary of what had occurred to bring about this change. Today, their goal was to ensure that all the students were aware of the academy's new normal. Tomorrow, they would sort the students according to skill level and begin teaching in earnest. Iruka was not looking forward to unlocking the new students' chakra networks. Even with Gorgon's blood ensuring that they would survive the process with no permanent side effects, Sito had told him that there was no avoiding the extreme pain that always occurred when an adult or adolescent's chakra network was forcibly unlocked. Putting away such thoughts for now, the Chunin focused on the task at hand. The auditorium, though massive, could not house all of the academy's students, even with their number substantially reduced. Several meetings intended to bring the students up to speed on the academy's new policies had to be scheduled, and the last such meeting would include the amnesiac Odo ninja. Though Shikaku and Inoichi were confident that they could destroy Orochimaru's seals while leaving the affected shinobi's memories intact, they needed more time than the 2-week deadline allotted to them by Jiraiya and felt that destroying the caged bird seal was a far more productive use of their time. Namikaze Mansion. Armory. This is amazing. Naruto-kun. The craftsmanship of some of these weapons predates the Warring States era. Please let me borrow one. Tenten had started salivating just seconds after entering the Namikaze armory. I don't mind lending one to you, but before I agree I must ask why you want this. Naruto replied. Since his mansion's self-repair jutsu was still fixing the courtyard, the Namikaze lord decided to hold his sparring session with Tenten indoors. As soon as he told her that his family's armory adjoined the sparring room, the weapon master all but pounced at the door separating the two rooms. Isn't it obvious? Tenten snapped. The means to craft some of these weapons, she pointed to a particularly exquisite katana, has been lost to time. With the help of my grandfather, I can use one of these as a template to take my family's craftsmanship to the next level. Naruto didn't miss the peculiar emphasis Tenten used when referring to her progenitor. Oh yeah, your family is descended from Hephaestus-sama the smith god, aren't they? What? Tenten was shocked that Naruto knew. She'd only told Guy about Hephaestus, and even with him she was vague when describing her encounters with the god. Let's just say I have a friend who can sense when a god comes to Konoha. Naruto elaborated. He knew that Sito's true nature was now an open secret, but that didn't mean he had to announce her presence from the rooftops. Tenten was quickly proving to be a very reliable friend and potential lover, but Naruto wasn't ready to trust her with what happened in his childhood. Anyways, may I please borrow this sword? Tenten collected herself. I vow on my honor as a blacksmith that it will not be damaged while in my care. Very well, you can borrow it if you manage to draw my blood in our sparring session. Naruto decreed before leaving the armory. Tenten had to stop herself from running to the sparring room. When she entered the room, Naruto was already waiting for her with Tenseiga drawn. Are you mocking me? The young woman yelled. I know that sword can't injure anyone without a huge amount of strength behind the swing from your deathmatch with Neji. That's what makes it a perfect sparring weapon. Naruto countered. Unlike a practice sword, Tenseiga is designed for use on the battlefield. Though, as you've pointed out, she's not meant to cut mortal flesh. Tenseiga. Such a beautiful name for a sword. Tenten gushed as she drew Kumanekoso. Begin. Naruto roared and rushed at Tenten, who leapt onto one of the room's walls and launched Kumanekoso at Naruto. The 5 kunai were attached to ninja wire, and by channeling chakra through them, the weapon master could manipulate their trajectory in the same way a puppeteer controls a marionette. 2 of the knives were aimed at Tenseiga while the other 3 sought Naruto's face, torso, and left shoulder respectively. If I block, then Tenseiga will be tangled in the ninja wire, and if I dodge, she'll keep using chakra to animate the wire until either she runs out or I get too tired to move. Naruto strategized. Time to show her just how deadly Tenseiga can be. The young Daiyoukai spun Tenseiga in his left hand like a fan, creating a gale force wind that deflected Kumanekoso. Tenten channeled chakra through Kumanekoso to disperse the impromptu windstorm, but Naruto had done the same with arm while spinning Tenseiga, and he had far more chakra than her. Tenten had to leap to the wall on opposite side of the room, nearly 200 feet away, to avoid the gale. He's certainly not holding back with his strength. That move was incredible. A blush slowly spread across the young woman's face as she recalled Kumanekoso to her right hand. By unspoken consent, neither combatant intended to use any jutsu not directly related to their weapons in this match. This was the first chance Naruto had to practice his Kenjutsu since finishing his training under Zabuza and Haku, and Tenten wanted to prove she could injure Naruto with as little ninjutsu as possible. That was a wonderful dodge, Tenten-chan. Naruto drew and threw 4 shuriken. Now let's see how you handle this. Took the words right out of my mouth. Tenten sheathed Kumanekoso into a specialized scabbard she now wore next to her shinobi pouch and then drew and threw 6 shuriken. Immediately after throwing them, Tenten flashed through a series of hand seals. On the other side of the room, Naruto weaved a one-handed variant of the same sequence. Shuriken Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique, the pair shouted simultaneously. The number of airborne projectiles exploded by 2 orders of magnitude. The 1,000 shuriken collided in the vast space between Naruto and Tenten, but instead of falling to the ground they were held in place by ninja wire. Thanks for all the extra weapons, Naruto-kun. A storage scroll fell to the floor from Tenten's spot on the wall. 100 fishing line-like wires adorned each of Tenten's fingertips. She raised her hands above her head as high as they could go, and the shuriken swarmed above her like an army of hornets. Don't mention it. After all, you'll need them. Naruto raised Tenseiga above his head and then slammed it down, creating a crescent-shaped wind blade that would have made any Fuden specialist observing it envious. Tenten launched her barrage of shuriken in response and sent enough chakra through her wires to detonate all the shuriken. The 1,000 explosions were sufficient to disperse the wind blade, but Naruto was right behind it. Time to bring this fight home. Tenten redrew Kumanekoso and threw 3 of its blades at Naruto before rushing at him with the remaining 2. Naruto dodged the trio of blades. He knew they were still attached to wires but had every intention of ending this match before Tenten could do anything more with them. The Namikaze Lord lashed out with Tenseiga. A broken arm would be enough to finish this. Ha! Both combatants screamed with determination. Tenten dodged Naruto's first swing by twisting her torso just out of Tenseiga's reach. Before Naruto could launch a follow-up strike, she counterattacked with a blistering series of strikes. Forced onto the defensive, Naruto leapt back to gain the distance needed to initiate one of the combos taught to him by Zabuza. Checkmate. Naruto-kun. Tenten had predicted where Naruto would dodge, and with a flick of her right wrist, the previously dodged blades of Kumanekoso soared toward the back of Naruto's head. He managed to dodge 2 of them completely, but the third grazed his right cheek as it sailed back to its owner. Great job. Naruto bowed to his opponent. I wasn't underestimating you, but I wasn't expecting you to read my moves like that. I had an excellent teacher. Tenten returned the bow before stretching her hand out and grinning like a fiend. Now, the sword, if you please. Naruto smiled back before leaving to get Tenten's prize. Konoha Forest. Orochimaru's hideout. So your hive queen told you that Poseidon's my granddad, that's so cool. With her ancestral memories, you know so much about this world that's been forgotten. Yusen squealed while she and Shino traveled toward the last of Orochimaru's lairs found by the Anbu. It's not that simple, unfortunately. Shino replied. The Kikaichu queens rarely share the knowledge of ages past with us. I'm not sure if this is due to personal preference or if there's some sort of law in place that forbids them from doing so unless absolutely necessary. The second one, most likely. Yusen guessed. You said the queens are descended from Khepri. If the Egyptian gods are anything like the Grecian gods, then they love keeping secrets just for the sake of it. Enough chit-chat, you two. We're nearly at the hideout. Yama barked. So far, the mission had gone extremely well. Shino and Yusen had exceeded their quota at every other hideout, but Yama felt that this lair would be different. The 4 ninja neared a large cave that seemed at first glance to be a bear's hibernation den. The Anbu who found this hideout had discovered, and dispelled, a genjutsu in the back of the cave that had concealed a door leading to a much larger underground structure. As he had for each of the other hideouts they encountered on this mission, Shino ordered a swarm of Kikaichu to enter the lair. Since chakra is their primary food source, the parasitic insects evolved to detect it, and were therefore perfect for finding and neutralizing anti-intrusion seals. Though Jiraiya had said disarming the traps they found wouldn't count toward their success rate, Shino and Yusen saw no reason to leave the traps intact when they had the means to safely destroy them. Bubble pulse. A bubble nearly as large as Yusen's head emerged from her hands, flew to the area the Kikaichu were searching and popped. A pulse of Sweden chakra radiated outward, revealing 3 particularly subtle seals that the Kikaichu had missed and also exposing more mundane traps. Yusen threw a shuriken at an innocuous floor tile and a volley of poisoned spikes shot out from the nearby wall. She threw 3 more shuriken at other tiles farther down the path. Good work, both of you. Kurenai praised. The quartet continued in silence while Shino and Yusen repeated their trap-detecting methods. Though several doors and halls were leading away from the main path, the 4 shinobi did not investigate them. Their mission was to provide initial reconnaissance only. Anbu and Jonin from several clans would be jointly exploring the lairs once Konoha's reconstruction was complete. Looks like this is as far as we go. Yama mused. The main hallway had stretched for nearly 2 miles from the lair's entrance before emptying into a vast chamber. In the distance, several smaller corridors could be seen leading to other parts of the lair. Closer to the quartet's position, dozens of warp seals were carved into the floor. This must have been the primary staging area for the invasion. Kurenai surmised. If this room was filled to capacity, then at least 1,000 shinobi could have warped into one of the hideouts we found inside Konoha from this location alone. We may not be going any further, but we should at least clear this room of traps. Bubble pulse. Yusen shot out dozens of bubbles, which popped all over the room. At first nothing happened, but then a huge seal matrix appeared on the floor. This is a summoning matrix. Orochimaru must have programmed it to activate in response to sensory jutsu. Kurenai cursed. Just as the quartet turned to leave, barriers of purple flame covered every hallway leading away from the staging area. We're in for it now. Be ready for anything. Yama ordered. A tree emerged from the center of the summoning matrix. Though it wasn't very tall, its circumference was massive. A hollow cavity in the center of its trunk fired a dark purple beam at Yusen. The projectile struck her before she or her teammates could react, and she rose off the ground and was pulled toward the cavity. Yusen-chan. Shino grabbed her arm and used chakra to stick to the floor. While fighting the gravitational pull of the tree's attack, he sent a legion of Kikaichu at the tree. A purple aura manifested around the tree, and the force drawing Yusen into it tripled in potency. Shino was ripped off the floor and flew through the air. Bubble shield. Yusen formed a 20-layer barrier around herself and Shino just before they hit the cavity in the tree's trunk. Immediately after its prey had landed, the tree's structure warped around them, resembling a gigantic, wooden cocoon. Seconds later, the tree exploded in size to form a massive construct of wood that vaguely resembled a human. The cavity containing Shino and Yusen formed its heart, and hundreds of roots were trying to breach the bubble shield. The shield was holding, but the outermost barrier was now visibly thinning. The heart was soon covered by several layers of wood, blocking the two genin from view. Drain the chakra of whoever sensed it, and then use it to help power a golem that wipes out their teammates. What a nasty trap. Yama swore. I can sense that Shino's Kikaichu are doing their best to intercept the roots. Kurenai responded. If we can distract this thing enough, they may be able to destroy it from the inside. The golem slammed a gargantuan arm at the two jonin. Sujinheki. Uzumaki. Water formation wall. Maelstrom, a torrent of water swirled around Yama and Kurenai with tremendous force. Not only was the golem's attack deflected, but the abrupt shift in momentum was enough to knock it off its feet. As the golem began to stand, the maelstrom condensed around Yama's right arm. The giant among men made a punching motion, aiming for the golem's left shoulder joint. A titanic roar filled the chamber as the maelstrom was fired at its target. The golem's left arm was blasted off its body. Immediately, countless roots appeared on what was left of the construct's left shoulder, but before they could start growing into a replacement limb, cracks formed in the wood surrounding the golem's heart and thousands of Kikaichu swarmed to the shoulder to devour the chakra pouring out of the roots. As the golem struggled to stand, the roots ceased growing and the Kikaichu returned to their host. Excellent work, Shino-kun. Fusa. Sealing chains. Kurenai fired 12 forest green chains from her hands. 3 wrapped around the golem's left leg, another 3 around its right leg, another 4 ensnared its right arm, and the final 2 strangled its neck. The golem screamed in rage as it lost the ability to channel chakra through its head and remaining limbs. It tried to leverage its brute strength to break the chains, but the Genjutsu mistress channeled more chakra into them to increase their durability. Now that its chakra was confined to its torso, Shino's Kikaichu feasted on it. The construct's eyes, once a baleful purple, now faded to a much lighter tint of violet. Sujinheki. Uzumaki. Yama formed 2 condensed maelstroms on his arms and took aim at the golem's head and right arm. With another deafening roar, the arm was severed and the head was obliterated. Kurenai redirected the chains used to restrain the destroyed areas at the golem's heart. They pierced the wood surrounding it and began prying it off. Bubble shockwave. Yusin shifted most of her bubble shield to face what was left of the wood trapping them in the cavity and willed it to rapidly expand. It was more than enough to destroy the weakened wood and she leapt out of the cavity, followed closely by Shino. Between losing its heart and having most of its chakra devoured by Shino's Kikaichu, the golem had nothing left. Its eyes vanished, and what was left of its body shriveled into dead wood. Thanks a million, Shino-kun. Without your Kikaichu stopping all those roots, my bubble shield wouldn't have lasted long enough for Dad and Kurenai-san to break me out. Yusin trapped Shino in a bear hug. The Aburame heir returned the embrace and did his best to ignore the shit-eating grins spreading over Yama and Kurenai's faces. I'd say our two charges just earned their promotion to Chunin, Kurenai-san. Yama chuckled. Yes, we can hardly fault Yusin-chan for triggering a trap we failed to detect, and she and Shino had more than met the quota for this lair beforehand, not to mention all the others. Not only that, but they did a fantastic job of both protecting themselves and helping us destroy that thing. Kurenai agreed before turning to the still-hugging pair. Shino-kun, Yusin-chan, we're moving out. Acknowledged. The soon-to-be Chunin replied. The next day, outskirts of Konoha. Naruto was eating lunch in a restaurant, taking a break from the last major reconstruction job in Konoha. He'd stopped using Kage Bushin for the repair jobs the day before he had his spar with Kiba, as he wanted to give the Inuzuka heiress his full attention. Sasuke was eating with him. He'd been helping Naruto with this last job to get some practice in applying his Hanyu strength in ways other than combat. Just as Naruto paid for his and Sasuke's meals, two people entered the restaurant. They wore long, black cloaks with red clouds and conical straw hats with small ornamental torques and tassels hanging down over their faces. Welcome. Please be seated and someone will be with you as soon as. Quote. The restaurant greeter's spiel died as killing intent flooded the room. Luckily, Naruto, Sasuke, and the two Akatsuki members were the only customers in the restaurant. There's our target, but who's the brat that looks almost just like you? The blue-gray-skinned one asked. Sasuke, my little brother. His partner replied. When I slaughtered my clan like cattle, he was too weak to be worth killing. Not much seems to have changed. Only a firm grip on his right shoulder stopped Sasuke from falling for Itachi's taunt. Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki, pretty sure I can guess why you're here, and, if I'm right, the last thing either of you want is to cause a huge ruckus that would attract any number of shinobi. Sasuke and I are going to Shunshin into the forest just outside the village gates. I'm sure you can follow with your Sharingan, Itachi. The Uchiha criminal nodded, activating his clan's Dujutsu. Naruto and Sasuke vanished, and the Akatsuki members followed them half a second later. Naruto, what are the odds of us winning this? Sasuke asked once all four of them were in a huge forest clearing. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd have to say 0. Naruto grimaced. Tisk. I was hoping for some optimism. Sasuke snorted. That is the optimistic assessment, Sasuke. A more realistic appraisal of our chances puts us in the negatives. Naruto countered. It's so refreshing to fight an opponent who knows when they're out of their depth. Kisame grinned. And by having us come here, I'm sure you've no intention of coming along quietly. Give the shark man a prize. Naruto smiled back. Surrendering without a fight isn't my style, plus Sasuke would never let me hear the end of it. The Jinchuriki knew he couldn't draw on Kurama's chakra for this fight. He'd gone to his absolute limit when he gave her control during the invasion and had been told when he regained consciousness that his body would need a full month to recover before he could use her chakra at all. It had only been 10 days. If he used even a sliver of Kurama's chakra now, his body would start breaking down immediately. Before we begin, how did you recognize Kisame-san? Itachi asked. Myself. I understand, but the name and physical description of an S-rank criminal from a foreign nation is not typically disclosed to Chunin. Simple. I was trained in Kenjutsu by the devil of the hidden mist. Naruto answered while drawing Tokujin. There was no point in hiding that fact as it would become evident as soon as he and Kisame crossed blades. Fighting styles are like fingerprints. Against other opponents, the split-second advantage of having an unknown fighting style may have been enough to earn victory, but the gap in power and experience was too vast for it to matter in this case. Ha! That kid taught you Kenjutsu. This'll be even more fun than I thought. Kisame drew Samahata, which immediately enlarged enough to shred the bandages concealing its blade. If he's been trained by Zabuza, then Naruto must know that Samahata can cut through and devour chakra. That means he won't bother using any long-range jutsu he has and will try his best not to be hit in melee combat. Itachi. Today's the day you pay for what you did that night. Sasuke's Sharingan blazed into existence. His older brother silently followed him as he moved a few dozen feet away from Naruto and Kisame. I'll let you take the first shot, disciple of Zabuza. Kisame yelled. You're too kind. Naruto raised Tokujin above his head, and the Yukai sword crackled with lightning. After a few seconds of seeing Tokujin charge up, Kisame got bored of waiting and rushed Naruto, who countered by forming 20 Kage Bushin. HMPH. Kisame adjusted his form to intercept the clones now running at him. Samahata wouldn't be able to drain all of their chakra due to how quickly it dissipated after they died, but enough could be absorbed to make Naruto regret his strategy. To Kisami's surprise, some of the Kage Bushin leapt above him and then turned to rush him from behind after landing. He soon found himself surrounded by clones. Undaunted, he moved to make a spinning slash to destroy all of them at once, but he missed a quick flash of two-hand seals from the original. Bunshin Daibakua. Clone Great Explosion, the 20 clones detonated simultaneously. And here I thought only Itachi knew the trick, not bad Naruto. Kisame applauded after leaping out of the blast radius. If you like that then you'll love this. Naruto swung Tokujin at Kisame and a sphere of lightning was launched from the tip of its blade. Kisame thought nothing of the long-range attack and chopped at it with Samahata. HMPH. Guess little Zabuza hasn't gotten around to telling you about what the. Kisami's taunt was cut short when Samahata vomited the lightning ball back at Naruto, causing a huge explosion. By itself, this was no cause for alarm. Kisame sometimes had Samahata regurgitate absorbed chakra when fighting foes highly skilled in long-range combat. The problem was how quickly the regurgitation occurred. It was as if the mystic blade couldn't stomach the energy it had eaten. I thought so. Naruto smirked, still concealed by the dirt kicked up when his attack was hurled back at him. Unlike the rest of Kiri's 7 swords, which were forged by the Terumi clan, Samahata was a gift from Sito-sensei. Its abilities are divine in nature, so it can't safely absorb Yuki, the opposite of divine power. Naruto swung Tokujin again, now firing a huge lightning blast at Kisame. The descendant of Sito instinctively struck the incoming attack with Samahata. His years of blocking attacks in this manner now worked against him since his muscle memory was geared for this reaction. As before, Samahata consumed the attack and immediately vomited it back. Naruto met the incoming blast head-on, trusting in Tensega's barrier to keep him safe. Another updraft of dirt concealed his movements as he streaked to Kisame like a heat-seeking missile. Tokujin, still clad in demonic lightning, clashed with Samahata. The shark sword couldn't absorb energy during a sword lock, so Kisame was electrocuted. That's an interesting sword you got there, Naruto-kun. Kisame shrugged off the pain and flicked his wrist with enough force to break the sword lock, pushing Naruto a few feet back. He then followed up with a powerful downward slash that Naruto barely blocked. The force of this strike blew Naruto back a dozen feet, and Tokujin creaked ominously. The opposing nature of Tokujin and Samahata cut both ways. Samahata couldn't absorb Tokujin's lightning, but the blessing coursing through every scale on Samahata's blade was toxic to Tokujin. If Naruto had been deemed worthy of Tokujin's full power, the blade would have been capable of protecting itself for at least several minutes before succumbing to Samahata's blessing, but as things stood now Naruto sensed that Tokujin could only take a few more hits, at best, before it broke. This is rich. Our swords are each other's worst enemy. Kisame laughed as he created a huge amount of sweetened chakra below his feet to increase his speed. Samahata smelled blood in the water and was quivering with excitement. Hang in there, Tokujin. Naruto shifted into his Daiyoukai form and leapt back into the fray. Now that he could channel his own Yuki through Tokujin, the sword lock momentarily favored him, but Naruto knew that would change the second Kisame realized how much strength was needed to overcome him. Dakuso. Poison Luster Claws, with his right hand holding Tokujin, Naruto activated his progenitor's infamous claws in his left hand and slashed at Kisame. The shark man sensed danger and leapt away. Hikari no Muchi. Whip of light. With a flourish of his left forefinger and middle finger, Naruto crafted a whip composed of the same venomous Yuki that had imbued his claws mere seconds ago. The demonic whip ensnared Kisami's left arm and instantly began corroding it. Ah! The poison was potent enough to make even Kisame cry in pain as he severed the whip with Samahata. His arm was still functional, but its strength and dexterity were weakened considerably. Looks like I'll need to visit Leader Sama for treatment when we're done here. Cudin. Gokyaku no Jutsu. Sasuke and Itachi's fireballs collided in midair. The elder Uchiha's attack was superior, but it took more effort to overpower Sasuke's attack than he anticipated. The traces are well hidden, but Sasuke's chakra network is no longer that of a human's. What happened to you, little brother? Cudin. Gaki Rekken. Fire release. Raging flame fang. Itachi's observation was cut short when Sasuke exhaled hundreds of laser-like fire blasts. Sujinheki. Itachi conjured a water wall to protect himself, and the steam produced when the two jutsu collided was comparable to a fog bank. Chidori. Sasuke rushed at Itachi with his most powerful jutsu. Itachi wordlessly conjured an earth wall behind him, grabbed the arm holding Chidori, then spun around and slammed Sasuke into his Doryuheki jutsu. Weak. Itachi taunted. I thought I told you to despise me with every fiber of your being. You still don't have enough hatred to challenge me. Perhaps a reminder of what I took from you that night will fix that. Sasuke's eyes widened in terror as he saw an enormous amount of chakra build up in Itachi's left eye. Just before Sukuyomi could be unleashed, Sasuke snapped his eyes shut and channeled Raiden chakra through his entire body. The surge of electricity was brief, but it was enough to force Itachi to let go of him. Is that why you did it? Because you hated them? Hated me? Sasuke roared after leaping back several feet. You're pathetic. I found something far stronger than hatred to fuel my power. A bond someone like you can never understand. I'll show you, brother, that your precious eyes are nothing in the face of my bonds. Sasuke fully unleashed his chakra Yuki. His claws and fangs manifested, and his hair doubled in length. Senkin Ensu. Sasuke lunged at Itachi, using his superhuman sense of smell to discern his location. Itachi leapt up and over his earth wall, and was shocked to see Sasuke's demonic claws cleave the wall in two. He fights like an Inuzuka. How did this happen? Itachi turned quickly to face Naruto while recalling Sasuke's earlier words. Naruto-kun, what have you done? A glimmer of crimson light out of the corner of his eye was Itachi's only warning of his brother's latest attack. Rather than continue chasing an opponent faster than him, Sasuke slashed the air and 5 thin crescents of Yuki streaked toward Itachi. The elder Uchiha dodged and then rushed at Sasuke and hit him with a brutal gut punch. Sasuke flew back 36 feet and crashed into what was left of the earth wall. Blood erupted from his mouth, and the younger Uchiha lost consciousness. Not good. Naruto was trapped in another sword lock with Kisame. He tried his best to keep his distance, but the shark man was no fool. He knew that Tokujin was the only thing keeping him from draining Naruto's chakra. Though he was confused that Naruto never drew his second sword, Kisame guessed that Naruto's other blade was either situational in use or weaker than his primary weapon. The young man's transformation was unexpected, especially when he had the Kyuubi to draw upon, but he was physically no match for Kisame even while powered up. I gotta admit, for a shrimp you put up quite a fight, and Tokujin is a wonderful sword. Kisame acknowledged. But Tokujin's time is up, and so is yours. Kisame sent a surge of chakra into Samahata. The shark sword swelled in size and its scales ravaged Tokujin's blade, carving several deep cracks into it. Only a quick shift of the blade's angle made by Naruto at the instant of Samahata's expansion prevented Tokujin from being smashed into pieces. Naruto roared in pain. His quick thinking spared Tokujin the worst of Samahata's wrath, but he now took the full brunt of it. The shark sword's tip rammed into his left shoulder and knocked him back 500 feet. Tokujin flew from his hand, and he focused all his remaining Yuki into a barrier to cushion his fall. His Daiyoukai form was too resilient to receive near-fatal injuries from the impact, so Tensega's barrier wouldn't have activated, and he wanted to keep her power a secret for their next fight. If there is a next fight, Naruto thought morbidly. With his Yuki depleted, the Namikaze Lord was forced out of his Daiyoukai form just as Itachi finished incapacitating Sasuke. Sukuyomi. Itachi wasted no time trapping Naruto's mind in a hellish dreamscape. Sukuyomi realm. What has happened to Sasuke? Over 60 copies of Itachi wielding katana surrounded Naruto, who was chained to a crucifix. What's wrong, Kinslayer? My best friend put up more of a fight than you wanted him to. Naruto barely retained his smirk as 12 swords bit into him repeatedly. Talk. Itachi ordered, momentarily stopping the assault. Since you seem to care so much, you should be thanking me. Naruto screamed. We ran into Orochimaru and he put a cursed seal on Sasuke. The only way I could get rid of it was by turning him into a Hanyu. The Itachi's jaws dropped, and their swords nearly followed suit. Seriously though, why do you care? Naruto asked. You killed everyone else. Your parents, your friends, hell, it wouldn't surprise me if you had a girlfriend. Why are you so hung up on Sasuke when? Aarggghhhh. The onslaught of sword stabs resumed at 10 times the speed. My past is none of your concern. Itachi declared. It wasn't you. Naruto coughed. The Itachi again nearly dropped their swords. Never in 1,000 years would the Uchiha criminal have guessed that Naruto could correctly assume the truth. I'm right, aren't I? Naruto did his best to glare at his tormentors. You were only the instrument, not the mastermind. Who ordered it? Danzo. If he's responsible, then I may have set in motion a series of events that led to the bastard's death. Now, the Itachi did drop their swords. Naruto-kun, thank you. The numerous copies of Itachi vanished, leaving only one. The moon hurled through the blood-red sky and crashed into Naruto. His mind was brought to the very brink of shattering into a million pieces. Real world. 1 second after being hit with Sukuyomi, Naruto started foaming at the mouth and fell into a deep coma. Kisame summoned some fresh bandages out of a storage scroll and began wrapping Samahata up while Itachi moved to grab Naruto, but his efforts were halted by a blade of water streaking toward his head. This one is under my queen's protection. No harm shall befall him while I draw breath. Medusa flew between Itachi and Naruto. Sorry, Snake Lady, but you're hardly enough. Stop. What? Kisami's eyes bulged nearly out of their sockets. Samahata was shriveling up, making itself as small as possible, and was also shivering with tremendous frequency. Impossible. Samahata is afraid. Kisame gawked. Thine blade bears the essence of the noble Megalodon, a great beast ranked most highly in my queen's court. Medusa explained. Yet my ferocity is greater still. The Gorgon's eyes turned to Itachi and flashed sea green. Amaterasu. Itachi's right eye exploded with power in the same instant as Medusa's did. Electricity flashed in and out of existence between them, and the atmosphere seemed to implode around them as two mystic gazes, one of black flame, the other of pale stone, warred for dominance. Blood flooded out of Itachi's right eye, soon followed by identical torrents from both of Medusa's eyes. The Gorgon was slowly forced backward, and in what seemed far too quick an end for such a titanic struggle, the stone gaze fell before Amaterasu's might. Medusa's screams tore through the forest as she was consumed by Aben fire. We need to leave, now. Itachi panted. Using Amaterasu and Sukuyomi on the same day exacted a huge toll on him, and he'd never sustained Amaterasu for that long. Kisame nodded and went to pick up Naruto, but was halted by yet another water blade. I am a daughter of the sea. Of all the things that can claim my life, fire is the last thing I will ever need to fear. Medusa glared at Kisame, but her mana was depleted. The Gorgon bore dozens of third-degree burns all over her body, and her wings had melted into gold sludge, but she could still fight. Samahata roared with glee as it swelled to gargantuan size. A creature once thought to be untouchable had been brought low, and the shark blade was eager to feast on its blood. Get away from my godson. Jiraiya slammed a Rasengan into Kisame. The surprise attack occurred too quickly for him to block with Samahata, and he was thrown back hundreds of feet near Itachi's position. As Kisame stood, he found himself and Itachi surrounded by Jiraiya, Hiruzen, Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, Kurenai, Zabuza, and Haku. Guess we've overstayed our welcome, time to go. Kisame grabbed Itachi and shunshined away. I don't think so. Kakashi tracked the fleeing pair with his Sharingan and Sunshine to intercept, just like Itachi had done earlier with Naruto and Sasuke. He knew he stood no chance against his opponents, but he could at least knock them out of their Shunshin long enough for the others to catch up. Tsukuyomi. Itachi coughed up blood while glaring at Kakashi with his left eye and subjected him to 72 hours of pure agony. With the only Konoha ninja capable of tracking them incapacitated, the Akatsuki duo could retreat in safety. Hours later, the pair was resting in a cave near the outer borders of Hinokuni. Let's go, Kisame. Itachi was in no condition to fight, but he had recovered enough to travel. Leader Sama must be informed of Naruto-kun's abilities, and of the creature that survived Amaterasu and terrified Samahata. Right. Just don't push yourself too hard. Kisame agreed. Konoha General Hospital ICU, Medusa's room. Medusa's injuries were healing rapidly thanks to several IV bags worth of Gorgon's blood donated by her sisters. Zabuza entered her room, wanting to thank her for helping Naruto, but turned to leave after realizing she was still asleep. The last time I slept in the presence of a powerful warrior not sworn to my queen mother's service, I died. Medusa's words halted Zabuza's retreating steps. You must know I mean you no harm. Though he couldn't explain why, Zabuza felt betrayed by Medusa's words. Of course, but I strive not to make the same mistake twice. Medusa groaned. Samahata honors his lineage by baring his teeth against me in my moment of weakness. It is good that he no longer fears me. There is little sport in dispatching adversaries who are paralyzed by despair. Can Samahata absorb your mana? Zabuza asked. I will not know for certain until we cross paths again, but the possibility is high. Medusa sighed. Mana and chakra share many traits. Enough is different to ensure that Kisame himself cannot be empowered by it, but Samahata will likely prove to be an ultimate shield against my spells. Then you'll need help when you go to kill him. I've been dying to fight him again anyway. Zabuza offered. When the time comes, your aid will be most appreciated. Medusa turned to face the ex-Kiri Jonin. In preparation for that day, it would be best if I accompanied you on your missions so that I can ascertain how your tactics and mine can work in harmony. I think I'd like that, very much. Zabuza consented. Konoha General Hospital ICU, Naruto's room. Naruto, you're going to beat this. Please, show me that you can win over this. Anko was seated in the chair closest to Naruto's bed. The large room had several chairs, a few of which were currently also occupied by Hinata, Haku, Kiba, and Tenten. Please, Naruto, come back to me. Anko sobbed. Come back to you. I knew you were a psycho, didn't have you pegged as a pedophile though. Kiba yelled. Watch your mouth, you ignorant bitch. Anko screamed back. You've no idea what I've been through, no idea what Naruto's done to help me deal with it. Try dealing with night terrors for years on end with no help, and then you can lecture me on the morality of. Enough. Hinata's shout was softer than Kiba's or Anko's, but her killing intent slapped them like an adamantine whip. The man we all love is fighting for his life. This is no time to argue amongst ourselves. Tenten and Kiba blushed when their feelings for Naruto were exposed to all else in the room, but they did not deny them. It is most unfortunate that Gorgon's blood cannot remedy ailments of the mind. Haku sighed, getting nods of agreement from the other four women. Sito had slammed that door shut seconds after Steno and Urieli began filling bags with their blood. The body is predisposed to restore itself when injured or sick, and Gorgon's blood can vastly augment that process. The mind, however, is far less capable of recovering from damage, so there is precious little for Gorgon's blood to amplify. The best it could do for Naruto was stabilize him so his condition didn't deteriorate. Anko-san's outburst just now illuminates a key point. I would have preferred to discuss this at a later time, but the current crisis has forced my hand. Hinata's gaze was of pure steel as she looked at the other women in the room. As Naruto's primary wife, the decision of who to accept into his harem is mine alone. The Hyuga heiress paused for several seconds to let that sink in. Haku-chan has already been accepted. I have yet to formally interview Anko-san regarding her compatibility with Naruto, Haku-chan, and myself, but the outcome is a foregone conclusion. That leaves only the two of you. Hinata turned to face only Kiba and Tenten. Tenten-chan, I have yet to form an opinion regarding the possibility of your inclusion into the harem. You have ample time to make your case. Hinata now glared at the only woman whose prospects she had yet to address. Kiba-chan. Hinata all but spat the honorific. In light of current events, I am willing to excuse your behavior toward Anko-san as the result of extreme stress. This is your only warning. Do not insult one of Naruto's potential mates again. Why yes, Hinata Heim. Kiba squeaked. The next day, Konoha General Hospital, Sasuke's room. Naruto. Run. Sasuke yelled as he woke up. It took him a few seconds to realize he was in a hospital bed. Easy there, Sasuke-kun. Naruto's safe for the moment. Jiraiya said from his chair near the last Uchiha's bed. What's the last thing you remember? Naruto was fighting the shark skin bastard with the huge sword. I went full Hanyu against Itachi and then I got knocked out. Sasuke recalled. Neither you nor Naruto are weak, but that was a fight that you two were nowhere near ready for. Jiraiya said sternly. I get why you did it. Itachi knows the village like the back of his hand, so you wouldn't have been able to run, and Naruto likely didn't want bystanders caught in the crossfire. Since you were caught in a restaurant near the edge of Konoha, any attempt to get help would have been a huge gamble. Far better to get the fight started and raise enough noise to attract attention. All in all, it's one of the best plans you could have come up with. Especially since you didn't know what your opponents could do. Jiraiya sighed. Thankfully, it worked, and not a moment too soon. The Toad Sage rose to leave the room. The doctors say your injuries were relatively minor and you'll be discharged within the next few days. Once you're out, come to Hiruzen-sensei's office. The old monkey reopened more than a few of his wounds when he rushed out to save Naruto, so I'm stuck there for now, but as soon as you're ready the two of us are leaving to find the only medical ninja who can get Naruto out of his coma. By happy coincidence, she's also Hiruzen's chosen successor, so we're getting Naruto's savior and Konoha's next Hokage at the same time. So, this Tsunade person, what's she like? Sasuke asked Jiraiya. The pair had left Konoha at dawn and had spent the time since moving as quickly as possible without overexerting Sasuke toward a destination known only to Jiraiya. It was now noon, and Jiraiya lessened his pace while he answered Sasuke's question. Well, to start with, she's one of the Sannin like me, though she hasn't been an active shinobi in years. Jiraiya sighed. She lost both her brother and her lover in the Second Shinobi World War. To her credit, she soldiered on as best as she could after that, but in the end the grief was too much. At the peak of the Third Shinobi World War, Tsunade left Konoha and has spent the years since gambling the Senju clan's tremendous fortune away. Luckily, the Senju had so many assets at their peak that not even Tsunade's endless losing streak has put a dent into their coffers yet. HMPH, she must be a terrible gambler if all she's done for years is lose. Sasuke grunted. Ha. That's the Kami damn truth. Jiraiya chuckled. I used to say that if she ever started winning big it would be a terrible omen, though that usually ended with me punched through the nearest wall. Of the Sannin, Tsunade's the best at taijutsu. At her peak, sure, but since she's been inactive for years there's no way that's still true. Sasuke accused. You're right. Both Orochimaru and I prefer ninjutsu over taijutsu, but as she is now it's unlikely she can keep up with either of us. All the more reason to retrieve her as soon as possible. Jiraiya resumed his earlier pace, making Sasuke jog to keep up. After being poisoned by Kurama, Orochimaru's been trying to use his spies to track Tsunade down. My spies have been feeding them false information, but that only works for so long and I suspect they've already caught on. On that ominous note, Jiraiya stopped talking. 4 hours later. That's far enough for today. The Toad Sage declared as the duo reached a stretch of road frequently used as a campground. Sasuke looked at Jiraiya like he'd grown a second head. Didn't you say we needed to find Tsunade as quickly as possible? There's still plenty of daylight left. Why, so there is, and you'll need it for what I'm about to teach you. Jiraiya rebuked. One of the reasons you nearly died while fighting Gaara is that you ran out of chakra very quickly. Chidori is your strongest jutsu, but it's a massive chakra investment. Activate your Sharingan. I'm going to show you a jutsu stronger than Chidori that only costs a fraction of its chakra. Sasuke obliged, and Jiraiya held out his right hand. With incredible slowness, Minato's signature jutsu appeared in Jiraiya's palm. With his Sharingan active, Sasuke could see that the condensed ball of chakra was exponentially more powerful than his Chidori. He could also tell that using it required complete mastery of shape transformation, far beyond what was needed to form Chidori. This is the Rasengan. Your Chidori was born when Kakashi tried adding Raiden chakra to it. What he ended up with was a Raiden jutsu that has some similarities to the Rasengan, but is far weaker. Jiraiya's words caused Sasuke to doubt his hearing. The Rasengan was an absolute example of shape transformation. Adding a nature transformation to the equation was impossible. Furthermore, Jiraiya continued, Chidori, and its upgraded version, Reikiri, have a key weakness the Rasengan lacks. Tunnel vision. Sasuke grimaced. Exactly. In order to use Chidori or Reikiri without suffering from tunnel vision, you need some form of extrasensory jutsu to enhance your reaction time. Rasengan, despite being used in the same way, doesn't have this drawback because the Raiden chakra flowing through your whole body while using Chidori or Reikiri augments your movement speed beyond what your brain can keep up with. Jiraiya ceased the flow of his chakra and the Rasengan fizzled out. Since it doesn't incorporate a nature transformation, the Rasengan retains its full effectiveness regardless of your opponent's techniques. And it doesn't use hand seals either, so you can easily catch your opponent off guard with it, and I can use it even if I don't have the chakra to maintain my Sharingan. Sasuke smirked. You got it. Now, what's the biggest difference between Rasengan and Chidori? Jiraiya asked his temporary student. Rotation. Sasuke answered. When you first started to form the Rasengan, the chakra composing it was spinning rapidly in several directions at once. Jiraiya smiled in approval. There are 3 stages to mastering the Rasengan. Rotation is the first stage and is fundamentally similar to the water-walking chakra exercise. Jiraiya produced a storage scroll and withdrew 1 water balloon from it. He then used the Rasengan's first stage to destroy it before handing the scroll to Sasuke. You'll train in the Rasengan's first stage until nightfall, and not 1 second later. Hanyu or not, you don't have Naruto's massive chakra reserves and we'll be getting up at daybreak to continue our journey. Sasuke nodded before removing another water balloon from the scroll. Hokage's office, 2 hours after Jiraiya and Sasuke left Konoha. With this, the new Team 9 is officially formed. Asuma, currently acting Hokage with Jiraiya gone and Hiruzen still recovering, signed the final piece of paperwork needed to dissolve Team Guy and create a new Team 9 to replace it. Zabuza, Haku, and Tenten nodded in affirmation, while Medusa, also a member of the team per Zabuza's request, bowed in appreciation. The paperwork included the forms needed to draft the Gorgon into Konoha's military and the eyewitness testimonies of several shinobi who saw her feats during the invasion, which were more than sufficient to grant her the rank of Jonin. She wore her Hittite on her upper right arm, halfway between the shoulder and the elbow joint. Before leaving, Jiraiya-sama left explicit orders that Team 9 was to undergo an A-rank mission immediately after being formed. Tenten-chan will likely be doing most, if not all, of the work for this mission, but to be safe all of you are assigned to it. Something tells me this will get complicated. Asuma handed Tenten a storage scroll. Your mission is to repair Naruto Dano's sword, Tokujin. Payment for the mission will come from Jiraiya-sama's checking account. We accept this mission. Tenten spoke for her team and withdrew Tokujin from the scroll. The weapon's pitiful state nearly brought the young blacksmith to tears. She ran home, trailed closely by her teammates. Hephaestus-sama, I need your Tenten nearly tripped when she noticed something very wrong. The warm, soothing aura that had been present since the Grecian god of fire first took up residence in her home was gone. Tokujin is a Yukai blade. Hephaestus' voice boomed in all of Team 9's minds and a brief overview of the Namikaze clan's history was seared into Tenten's brain. After waiting a few moments for Tenten's mind to absorb the information, he continued his explanation. If it was in peak condition, it could withstand my aura for a time, but in its current state it would be purified instantly and become little more than scrap metal. No. Please, there must be something, anything you can do. Tenten begged. There is. I cannot aid you directly, so I will provide transportation to one who can. The land occupied by the elemental nations is vast but only represents a small portion of this world. The Namikaze clan once held territories in distant lands, and many of their former vassals are still willing to aid the Namikaze, should the need ever arise. The Yukai swordsmith Tutusai is among them. He forged Tenseiga and mentored the one who forged Tokujin. Go now. Your transportation awaits just outside. Team 9 left Tenten's house and were shocked by what they saw. A bronze crane large enough for 3 adults to sit on its back was sitting in the street. Zabuza, Haku, and Tenten mounted the mechanical bird and Medusa unfurled her wings. Alas, I would have preferred a test flight before flying to foreign lands so soon after my wings have healed. This is the test flight, though I have no doubt your wings are up to the task. Zabuza replied. Before Medusa could respond, the crane took off. Once the crane was high enough in the sky to ensure the resulting shockwave would have no impact on Konoha, it broke the sound barrier several times over, achieving Mach 10 almost instantly. Medusa had to channel a huge portion of her mana into her wings to keep up. The automaton's magic kept the 3 humans riding it safe from the extreme acceleration and maintained a breathable mini-atmosphere. This atmosphere also recharged Medusa's mana, allowing her to maintain her current rate of speed indefinitely. Half an hour later, the crane neared a volcanic mountain and descended toward its base. Partially buried in the volcano was the skull of a massive yukai. The structure of the skull seemed to suggest the yukai was a reptile of some sort in life, but too much of it was either buried in the mountain or missing entirely to know for certain. The yukai's jaws formed the door of Tutusai's home, and 4 empty eye sockets served as windows. After its passengers disembarked, the crane shrunk to the size of a large dog and followed Team 9 inside. Tenten appraised Tutusai's forge with a critical eye and found no flaw. Despite not having seen use in years, if not decades or centuries, the forge was in excellent condition. Well, this is a first. A statue of a humanoid yukai near the back of the house spoke. It was dressed in a green haori with black horizontal strikes on it and matching hakama. Never seen a gorgon in person before, heard plenty of stories though. The statue moved closer to Team 9 and the scroll containing Tokujin flew out of Tenten's hand. The statue transmuted from stone to flesh, caught the scroll, and summoned the blade within with a pulse of Yuki. So, Tokujin, how'd you break this time? Tutusai flicked Tokujin and a mournful hum filled his home. That's terrible. It's been over 100 generations since you last had an owner who actually appreciates you, and he's now comatose while you're half dead after clashing with a divine blade. The yukai swordsmith yelled before turning to see his new guests. An unseen force rippled through the house as Tutusai appraised them. A human, 2 demigods, and a gorgon. The current Namikaze lord keeps unusual company. This is good, very good. What do you mean? Haku asked. I'm getting old, girly. For now, my strength and skills are still at their peak, but give it another 200 or 300 years and my body will start giving out on me. Tutusai sighed. I've served the Namikaze since the beginning, more thousands of years ago than I care to remember at the moment. Even most Daiyoukai don't live that long, and I'm not one of those. My statue form prolongs my life, but my body still gradually ages. I need a successor, and Hephaestus' granddaughter is a perfect fit. Fundamentally, there's not much difference in the techniques used to forge divine and yukai weapons. What sets them apart is the energy fueling their powers. Tutusai turned to face Tenten. What's your name, kid? Tenten, and I'll gladly accept your offer. Not so fast, Tenten-chan. Being a yukai swordsmith means you have to be able to manipulate demonic energy, more commonly known as yuki. It's not enough to just collect a yukai's body parts and craft them into weapons or armor. Several groups of demon slayers have done that over the eons, and none of their blacksmiths could be considered yukai swordsmiths. Normally, it would be suicide for a demigod to try manipulating yuki. The divine power flowing through your veins would tear your body apart as it fought to purge the yuki. But you're at least 1,000 generations removed from Hephaestus according to the sensing spell I cast earlier. I can work with that no problem, but it's going to hurt like hell until your body adapts to it. Does Tenten need to become a yukai? Zabuza asked. Essentially, yes, but strictly speaking she'd be what some people would call a warlock, a human who pledges their service to a supernatural entity in exchange for power or knowledge. Tutusai clarified. In exchange for agreeing to be my successor and not use what I teach her for evil, Tenten gains the ability to create and control Yuki and will eventually learn all of my techniques. A great bargain, if I say so myself. Indeed, Medusa chimed in. The pacts established between a warlock and their patron are often lopsided in the patron's favor. More equivalent exchanges have occurred, but I have never heard of an arrangement that favors the warlock to this degree. Zabuza was silent for a few moments, then turned to Tenten and said, "It's your decision." "We have a deal," Tenten shouted in response. "Thank you for this, Tenten-chan." Tutusai cried tears of joy. "Now, you lot sit tight for a few minutes while I draw up the contract for our pact. Normally, a verbal agreement between us would be enough, maybe a blood oath if we wanted to get real formal about it, but Namikaze law states that any warlock who has a Namikaze or one of their vassals as their patron needs a written contract. Zabuza-kun, with the Namikaze lord incapacitated, you're the most senior member of the clan, so you'll need to look over the contract on Tenten-chan's behalf before she signs it. Being my warlock makes her an honorary Namikaze, so she's your subordinate in more ways than one now." Zabuza nodded and Tutusai conjured parchment and an ink brush out of thin air. Given its simplicity, the contract was ready in less than 10 minutes. 3 copies were made, one for Tutusai to keep, another for Tenten, and a final one to be placed in the Namikaze vault once Naruto recovered. Zabuza, well versed in deception, saw nothing in the contract that was cause for alarm and was impressed that Tutusai had added an included, but not limited to, clause that listed examples of what he considered acts of evil. His eyebrows nearly shot out of his face when he read the last such example, killing children and using their fat and blood as ingredients to craft a sword. But he concluded that it was a bad experience with a rival swordsmith or even a wayward apprentice. The Terumi clan was not the only clan in Kiri's history that had tried their hand at crafting supernatural weapons, and many of their competitors had used less than savory methods to compensate for their lack of skill. Most of those clans had been casualties of Kiri's numerous civil wars, and Zabuza didn't doubt for a second that Mei would soon order the execution of any who remained if she hadn't already. "The contract is great, Tenten-chan. Read it all the way through and sign." Zabuza handed her the ink brush as well. Tenten took several minutes to fully absorb everything in the contract and then another few minutes to steel her nerves. The contract stated in no uncertain terms what being a warlock would mean for her. She'd still be human in body, but her soul would be infused with Yuki. Not enough to transform her into a Yukai or Hanyu, but the spiritual composition of her soul would be irreversibly changed. As Tutusai said, she would essentially be a Yukai in spirit. "And done," Tenten said with steel in her voice as she signed the last copy. "Perfect." Tutusai snapped his fingers and his copy vanished while Tenten's and Naruto's were rolled up and secured with red ribbons. The ribbon for Naruto's copy was outlined in gold to signify that it was for the Namikaze Lord's eyes only. "I said it before, but I can't stress enough that this will hurt." Tutusai's body glowed with a fiery aura. "No sense in delaying it any longer, here we go." Tutusai breathed a torrent of flames at Tenten. After impacting her, the flames were steadily absorbed into her body. During the process, she felt like she was being stabbed with knives, but it was over before the pain could become unbearable. "That wasn't too bad," Tenten laughed. "Wait for it," Tutusai warned. "The initial infusion is relatively painless, but being a warlock doesn't change the fact that you're a demigod. Any second now, your divine blood will try to reject my Yuki and then you'll be in for a world of..." "Ah!" Tenten screamed. Medusa conjured a spherical wall of water around her to mute the sound. Just because she was in agony didn't mean everyone else's ears needed to suffer. "How long will this go on?" Haku shivered. "Not sure. I've never done this before myself and my knowledge on the subject comes from other Namikaze vassals." Tutusai answered. "If they weren't full of ox shit, then Tenten-chan's in for at least 24 hours of this, maybe up to 48 hours if she's unlucky. Once the infusion process is complete, she'll need at least 3 days to recover, maybe up to a week. On the plus side, fundamental knowledge of how to create and control Yuki is part of the infusion process, and I threw in some memories of a few beginner-level Yukai spells." "Hai no Kuni. I've got it," Sasuke yelled in triumph. It had been 4 days since he'd first started training to master the Rasengan. "Even with your Sharingan, that took less time than I expected, show me." While Sasuke trained, Jiraiya had been catching up on the reports his spies had filed while he was stuck behind Hiruzen's desk. The reports were filled with bad news. For the moment, Tsunade's location was safe, but the regional overseer of his network had made it abundantly clear that he wouldn't be able to conceal it for much longer. At least Orochimaru's travel speed will be slowed to a crawl with his current condition. Jiraiya thought bitterly as Sasuke conjured a water balloon from his storage scroll. Holding it in his left hand, the last Uchiha rotated his chakra in over a dozen directions simultaneously. A few seconds later, the water balloon exploded. Excellent work, Sasuke-kun, but rotation is child's play compared to the next stage. Jiraiya withdrew another storage scroll from his kimono and summoned a rubber ball from it. Sasuke activated his Sharingan as Jiraiya held the ball out. In the blink of an eye, the ball exploded. What the fuck? Sasuke swore. The second stage to the Rasengan is power. With the first stage, the chakra is used in a continuous flow, but in the second stage you have to exponentially increase the density of chakra channeled through your hand and make it explode in an instant. Give me your hands, Jiraiya ordered after finishing his explanation. Sasuke complied, and Jiraiya used an ink brush to paint a spiral on the center of his left palm and place the scroll containing the rubber balls in his right hand. Focus on that spot while exploding your chakra. It's not enough to just pop the rubber ball. Like the water balloon, you have to completely destroy it. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed in thought. Normally, the power stage is at least 100 times harder than the rotation stage, but since you've mastered Chidori, which requires you to condense a huge amount of Raiden chakra around your hand, this might be easier for you to learn than the first stage was. At the very least, it shouldn't be as hard as it normally would be. Got it. Sasuke smiled. Tutusai's home. Wow, my everything. Tenten moaned. She had not been lucky with the infusion process and had to endure the full 48 hours. Tutusai placed the girl in his bed once the process was completed and reverted to his statue form until she woke up. Blessedly, she slept like a log for the next 2 days. While she was still in a lot of pain, it was nothing compared to what came before. The ritual was a complete success. Tutusai declared. Once your divine blood got the hint that Miyuki wasn't trying to corrupt or kill you, it backed off. You'll have to ask Hephaestus to be sure, but you should still be able to benefit from his blessings without any side effects. She can. Medusa confirmed. Demigod warlocks are rare, but not unprecedented. Since Tenten's patron is a blacksmith, and Lord Hephaestus is the god of blacksmiths, any blessing placed on her by her grandfather will have tremendous synergy with her Yuki. So we can start repairing Tokujin as soon as I'm fully recovered, right? Tenten sat up on the bed. Wrong. Tutusai denied while holding Tokujin. Every other time one of Naruto's idiotic ancestors got in over their head and broke Tokujin, his blade was snapped cleanly in two. That's easy to fix. All I needed was a fang from the imbecile's Daiyoukai form to bond the pieces back together. This time, though, he's still in one piece but has deep cracks all over him. The structural integrity of the entire sword is compromised. That's still an easy fix. Tenten countered. You can heat the blade to a near liquid state, add some metal to make up for what was gouged out by Samahata, and hammer it back into shape. Not that simple for 2 reasons. Tutusai rebuked. First, Tokujin is a sword of lightning, so aside from a Daiyukai's fang, which we don't have, the only materials that can be used to repair him have to come from Yukai capable of manipulating lightning, ideally a fang since that's what Tokujin's already made of. Second, Tokujin's biggest problem right now is that the blessing of the sword that damaged him is still clinging to him like a bad habit. Some blessings I can purge, but this one's way too strong for me. A lightning Daiyukai's fang is the only thing powerful enough to cleanse Tokujin. One should be enough, but I'd prefer to have 2 just in case. Daiyukai. You mean we have to fight something as powerful as Naruto? Haku's eyes became saucers. Our quarry is likely far stronger. Keep in mind that Naruto-sama's Daiyukai powers are still immature. Zabuza grimaced. You're in for one hell of a fight, that's for sure, but Hephaestus planned for this. Tutusai turned to the mechanical crane. Gimme. The crane swelled to its original size, walked toward Tutusai, and opened its mouth. From a hidden compartment, 12 baseball-sized spheres made of quartz dropped to the ground near Tutusai's feet. Purification stones, and very high-quality ones at that. Just the thing needed to make an anti-Yukai field. Tutusai picked one of the stones up, and the claw on his right finger glowed red-hot. He began carving kanji into the stone. I can key these to only affect our target, and I happen to know the location of a lightning Daiyoukai. By the time I'm done setting up everything you'll need to deploy the anti-Yukai field, Tenten-chan should be fully recovered. Medusa-san, you can't help in the fight. Your mana has divine properties, so any attack you make against the target will ruin her. Is there anything you can tell us of our Pre's abilities? Haku inquired. Aside from the fact that she's absurdly powerful. No. I've never seen her fight and don't know anyone who has, likely because they all died in the process. Tutusai mused. The anti-Yukai field will severely cripple her, but it's going to take everything you lot have to eke out a win. With that declaration, Tutusai fully concentrated on preparing the purification stones for Team 9's task. Tenten groaned and laid back in bed. She wasn't tired but knew she needed to rest as much as possible. Zabuza, Medusa, and Haku left her to it and moved a fair distance away to discuss strategies for the hunt. The Gorgon still intended to contribute to the mission. There were other ways to aid her teammates than direct combat. Haku memorized the entire conversation so she could bring Tenten up to speed when she was ready. Otogakur, 1 week after Tenten's conversion to a warlock. Orochimaru-sama, it took far longer than I'd have liked, but I've broken through the subterfuge of Jiraiya-san's spy network and discovered Tsunade Dano's true location. Kabuto announced after walking into his master's bedroom. The snake Sanin had been confined to bed after being poisoned by Kurama. For the moment, the medication prescribed by Kabuto along with some very advanced medical ninjutsu was keeping the Yukai toxin contained to Orochimaru's arms, but Kabuto knew his measures had only delayed the inevitable. His treatments augmented the already immense regenerative properties of his master's body, but the poison still slowly progressed. The poison was paralytic in nature, and Kabuto did not want to think about what would happen once it spread to Orochimaru's torso. Excellent work, Kabuto. Orochimaru smirked. He was seething that it took so long for his subordinate to track Tsunade down, but the delay was unavoidable given the efficacy of Jiraiya's spies. To breach their shroud of misinformation in less than a month after the failed invasion was commendable. With a Herculean effort, Orochimaru rose out of bed. Kabuto knew better than to argue. Excessive motion would likely accelerate the poison's rate of progression, but there was a very high chance that Jiraiya would reach Tsunade before he and Orochimaru could. Before we leave, I must prepare more doses of your medicine to ensure you remain fit to travel, Orochimaru-sama. Fine. Orochimaru hissed in frustration. Hai no Kuni. You continue to amaze, Sasuke-kun. Jiraiya said in awe after Sasuke obliterated a rubber ball. 3 days, that's how long it took for the last Uchiha to master the Rasengan's second step. Even though he knew Sasuke would have an easier time of it than most due to already knowing Chidori, he was still shocked. It's not just because he's an Uchiha. The real reason is his drive to get stronger. Not just to kill Itachi, but to protect all he holds dear. Jiraiya hadn't spoken to Sasuke much during the trip aside from instructing him on how to master the Rasengan, but Sasuke had a habit of talking while he slept. His unconscious ramblings generally followed 2 trends: strategizing to kill his brother and reflecting on how blessed he was to have Naruto as a friend and both Ino and Sakura as lovers. It was hard, but rewarding. Sasuke grinned. If you thought the second stage was tough, then you haven't seen anything yet. Get ready. Jiraiya produced the final of the 3 storage scrolls he had prepared for Sasuke's training and summoned a balloon from it. He inflated the balloon and held it before Sasuke. Kami. Sasuke whispered in shock as his Sharingan took in the marvel before him. The Rasengan in its full glory was raging within the balloon, but its rubber confines were completely unaffected. Jiraiya maintained the jutsu for nearly a minute before canceling it, then he looked expectantly at Sasuke. The Rasengan's third stage, Sasuke struggled to find his voice, is a flawless combination of the first and second stages, which are both contained within a spherical shell of chakra. With nowhere to go, the power becomes highly concentrated while spinning in place, becoming a miniature typhoon. It's a self-sustaining jutsu. Jiraiya smiled in response to Sasuke's observations before wordlessly tossing him both the balloon and the scroll it came from. With his lesson complete, Jiraiya began walking towards Tanzaku-gai. Sasuke followed as quickly as he could while trying to master the third stage. Tutusai's home. Is everyone ready? Zabuza asked his team. Yes, Zabuza-sama. Haku answered while experimentally twirling one of her new senbon in her right hand. Yup. Tenten responded after dumping most of the storage scrolls containing her weapons on the ground. My preparations are complete. Medusa replied solemnly as she tucked the storage scroll containing the components of the anti-Yukai field into her robe's sash. While Tutusai had no first-hand knowledge of the lightning Daiyukai's abilities, he was very knowledgeable of the general abilities wielded by most varieties of Yukai. When Zabuza asked him about the abilities lightning Yukai typically possess, the answer forced Team 9 to vastly alter the equipment they would bring to the fight. The Devil of the Hidden Mist had expected the first part of Tutusai's answer. Yukai capable of manipulating lightning often fire it from their hands or mouth, or channel it through any weapons they use. They can also form it into a barrier for defense. But when Tutusai told Zabuza that some lightning Yukai are capable of manipulating magnetism, the ex-Kiri Jonin's jaw hit the floor. Kubikiribocho should be safe. The alloys used to forge most of Kiri's 7 swords are highly resistant to most forms of external energy. Samahata is an exception because it devours the energy it's exposed to instead. As a precaution, Tenten applied one of her new Yukai spells to the massive blade, further increasing its resistance to Yuki. The newly minted warlock needed 5 days to fully recover from her conversion and had spent an additional 2 days mastering her new abilities. Despite no longer being fully human, her chakra responded just as it always had, something Medusa attributed to the fact that magic and chakra have a great deal in common. While Tenten worked on Kubikiribocho and Kumanekoso, Tutusai forged a large quantity of senbon for Haku out of Yukai bones. There was nothing that could be done for Medusa's golden wings and bronze claws. Seto's daughter all but radiated divine power, so any Yukai spell applied to her would be either dispelled or heavily weakened. How fortunate, then, that she was unable to participate in the fight. One last time, Tutusai-san, are you certain that my Hyouten Jutsu will not ruin our quarry in the same way Medusa-san's attacks would? Haku asked for the third time. I am a demigod and Hyouten is derived from Karaukami-sama's blood flowing in my veins. Positive, Tutusai grunted. Like Tenten-chan, your generation is so far removed from Karaukami that the divinity flowing through you isn't enough to purify a Daiyukai. Medusa's not only the daughter of a goddess but used to be a goddess herself. I don't know why she's stuck using mana now, but if she was at her peak then it's possible that her presence alone could purify most Yukai. If we're ready, then let's get this over with. Zabuza said before removing his Hitai-8 and throwing it onto the heap of weapons and equipment that Team 9 could not bring into their next battle. Tenten, Haku, and Medusa followed suit. Hephaestus Crane departed Tutusai's home with the 3 human members of Team 9, trailed closely by Medusa. The automaton once again achieved supersonic speed, but there was no need to accelerate all the way to Mach 10 this time. The lightning Daiyukai's location was roughly 1,000 miles from Tutusai's home. Mach 2 was sufficient to get Team 9 there in under an hour. Though Medusa did not need nearly as much mana to keep up with the automaton this time, her mana was still restored by its mini-atmosphere. While in transit, Zabuza and his 2 subordinates steeled themselves. Nothing they had experienced before would compare to this fight. Tutusai had told them that most Daiyukai didn't come close to the power wielded by Sesshomaru. That knowledge was cold comfort though, since Tutusai also told them that the weakest Daiyukai was orders of magnitude stronger than the most gifted human warrior. Zabuza chose to take that last statement with a grain of salt because he refused to believe that the weakest Daiyukai was exponentially more powerful than the likes of Hashirama Senju or Madara Uchiha, but even so, he knew his new team was in for the fight of their lives. All too soon, the crane reached its destination. A blood-red cumulonimbus hovered above a barren land that might have once been a forest or grassland. The desolation stretched for miles in all directions, and thousands of skeletons, many of which were almost completely buried in the lifeless dirt, were strewn throughout it. Black lightning tinged with crimson borders streaked through the cloud, which remained in place above the ruined land regardless of the wind's direction or speed. A great roar emanated from the cloud as Team 9 landed, but no lightning rushed to meet them. Medusa summoned the anti-Yukai field's components from her scroll, and still the cloud did not respond. Our prey seems unworried about our preparations. Haku mused. The Daiyukai's arrogance is our advantage. Not arrogance, confidence. Medusa countered while pointing to a skeleton that was mostly above ground. Around its neck hung an ornate amulet. That amulet bears traces of divine power. They are too weak for me to discern which god blessed it, but we are not the first to use divinity as a weapon against this Daiyukai. With that grim remark, the Gorgon unfurled her scroll on the ground and sent a pulse of mana through it to summon its contents. The 12 purification stones provided by Hephaestus had each been fused to a 20-foot-long silver rod with a sharpened point at the bottom. While not as physically powerful as her older sister Steno, Medusa's strength was far beyond most humans and she had no trouble driving the first of the 12 rods into the earth. She stopped only when the rod was completely buried, leaving only the quartz stone fused to its top above ground. For the next few minutes, Medusa placed the remaining 11 rods into position. When she was done, they formed a circle with a 500-foot circumference. The circle's size was discussed with Zabuza a few days earlier. Since Tenten and Haku were primarily long-range fighters, Zabuza wanted to give them room to maneuver but also did not want to risk granting their target too much room since the lighting Daiyukai likely also specialized in long-range combat. 500 feet seemed a reasonable compromise. The field is prepared. Once I activate it, only success or death awaits us. Medusa warned after returning to the first rod she placed. Upon hearing this, Tenten drew Kumanekoso, Haku drew Ten Senbon and coated them in Hyouten, and Zabuza brandished Kubikiribocho. All three of them stepped into the circle. The crane retreated several dozen feet behind Medusa and shut itself down. It could only recharge Medusa's mana while flying, and its own reserves could not be recharged. If it aided Team 9 in their current endeavor, the crane would be unable to fly them home. We're as ready as we're ever going to be, activate the field. Zabuza ordered. Medusa's face eyes and hair eyes glowed with power and a sea green aura containing 1/5 of her mana flared around her. The sanguine thundercloud boomed in response, but no assault on Team 9 was made. Medusa's aura condensed into a near-blinding sphere of light no larger than a golf ball. Queen Mother, guide our steps to victory. Medusa prayed before dropping the ball of mana onto the purification stone at her feet. Like a verdant raindrop, it seeped into the quartz without a sound. A half-second later the stone radiated silver light, looking like a baseball-sized moon. The earth trembled slightly as a line of silver mana shot from the stone in a clockwise direction to the next stone in the formation. 2 seconds later, this stone also resembled a miniature moon and another mana line streaked to the third stone. After 20 more seconds passed, all 12 stones were illuminated. In the next second, the stone's brightness doubled and yet another line of mana blazed from the first stone to the sixth. From the sixth stone, a line of mana surged to the 11th stone. This process repeated itself 10 more times. 11th to 4th. 4th to 9th. 9th to 2nd. 2nd to 7th. 7th to 12th. 12th to 5th. 5th to 10th. 10th to 3rd. 3rd to 8th. And 8th to 1st. Once complete, the anti-Yukai field's form was a 12-pointed star enclosed in a circle. The silver light's brightness increased by an order of magnitude and a silver beam erupted from the star's center into the heart of the thundercloud. A feminine voice screamed in rage as a huge mass of crimson lightning crashed into the circle. The lightning congealed into a giant blood-red tiger slightly larger than Gamabunta. Her stripes were pitch black, and her mouth was filled with hundreds of fangs. As the lightning tiger struggled to stand, Medusa conjured another mana aura containing 1/3 of her total reserves and channeled it into the purification stones. A transparent sea green dome stretched 200 feet into the air. Its outer wall was just in front of the purification stones. Your preparations are formidable, but do you truly think you're the first group of insects to use an anti-Yukai field against me? The tiger bellowed before converting herself to crimson lightning and shrinking to a humanoid form. Tenten and Haku gulped, and Zabuza, who was closest to the demon, began to sweat in fear. The lightning Daiyukai had a voluptuous figure, silver eyes and blood-red hair, snow-white skin, elven ears, and black bands on her arms similar to tiger stripes. A variant of said stripes adorned her face, One stripe flowed from the bottom of each eye diagonally down her cheeks and stopped just past her ear lobes. Her hands ended in clawed fingers. She wore a white shirt under a black kimono with matching hakama and black shoes with white trimming around the ankles, and graphite tabi socks. A leather cuirass coated with burgundy lacquer covered most of her upper torso, stopping just below her neck but leaving her midriff unhindered. Her forearms were covered in silk pads dyed red with blood that extended over the top of her hands. Garnet-colored pauldrons with silver, serrated edges protected her shoulders. These, along with the arm pads, were bound to her arms by thick graphite rings. A silver-colored waist sash hung down towards her knees and consisted of two shorter ends that hung away from the main knot and were tied to the back of the sash, forming a loop to the side of each leg, and two longer ends that hung straight down past the knees from the main knot. She also wore gold earrings that each consisted of double tassels linked to a small disc. In a blur of movement that Tenten had difficulty following, the lightning Daiyoukai flashed to the purification stone farthest away from Team 9 and tried to pierce through the dome with her left claws. The dome cracked slightly but otherwise held firm despite several subsequent strikes. Tisk. The Daiyoukai grunted and abandoned her assault. Almost instantly, the dome repaired itself. Very impressive. Worms. You've managed to suppress 95% of my power and physical might. This will be far more entertaining than the last batch of fools I killed. I am Cudin. Don't bother introducing yourselves. The air seemed to vibrate with killing intent. After all, meals don't need names. Cudin shot toward Zabuza, who countered with a brutal two-handed slash. Demonic claws clashed with Kubikiribocho in a thunderous roar. While Cudin's charge was halted, the impact sent Zabuza skidding back several feet. Haku's eyes bulged at Cudin's display of strength, but she wasted no time in throwing the Senbon she had drawn earlier. At first, Cudin remained expressionless as she emitted a pulse of Yuki toward the projectiles, but her eyes widened slightly when the magnetic field she generated failed to stop them. With a dancer's grace, she shifted her body to ensure that all 10 Senbon were blocked by her armor. The ice covering the needles shifted onto her armor and began to spread, but another pulse of Yuki destroyed it in an instant. Ice manipulation is a rare gift among mortals. You are either a very accomplished mage or a demi-human. Cudin mused. Why didn't you dodge when you easily could have? Tenten wondered. Is it not obvious? Cudin retorted. Avoiding your pathetic attacks implies that they are capable of harming me. Interesting theory. Let's see how long it stays true. Tenten launched Kumanekoso. Cudin again attempted to magnetically control the kunai and the wires attached to them, and her efforts failed once more. The 5 knives cleaved through the air, but to Cudin they almost seemed to be standing still. Seeing no harm in it, Cudin let Kumanekoso hit its marks. One of the kunai tried to pierce her neck but bounced off as if it hit a steel wall. 2 more aimed at her legs met the same result. The final 2 kunai sought her midriff. One bounced off but the other was imbued with enough chakra to make an ordinary kunai explode several times over. The empowered blade held just enough energy to overcome Cudin's natural durability, pierced her flesh only as far as was needed to draw blood. After being wounded, Cudin's eyes narrowed in a combination of shock, rage, and respect. I cannot remember the last time I was injured by an attack that wasn't endowed with either tremendous Yuki or the power of the gods. What is your name, warrior? Tenten. Cudin's assessment was technically right, so the young weapon master didn't feel the need to correct her. While she was a descendant of Hephaestus, her chakra did not have divine properties constantly like Haku's did. Her chakra's divine trait only manifested when utilized for yin release, the one element she had a natural affinity for. Well met, Tenten-san. Cudin smiled and grabbed the wire attached to the kunai embedded in her stomach. Lighting bolted down the wire toward its owner. The voltage was enough to dislodge the kunai from Cudin's chest and she let it fall to the ground. Shit. Tenten mentally swore before throwing all of the wires attached to Kumanekoso to the ground and leaping away. As soon as Cudin grabbed the wire, Tenten knew what was coming. If she had been a fraction of a second later in her response, she would have been electrocuted. Excellent reflexes. Cudin applauded as Tenten picked up Kumanekoso. She was about to fire a bolt of lightning at the genin but quickly changed targets to the blade of water rushing toward her. A great deal of steam filled the air as Cudin's lightning bolt impacted Zabuza's attack. When Haku, and later Tenten, launch their attacks. The Jonin took the opportunity to observe his enemy. But Cudin now knew her opponents could harm her, meaning that Zabuza could no longer afford to remain idle. After launching his attack, he shunshined away from his position and flashed through a set of hand seals. Not a second later, Cudin impaled the space his body had just vacated. Just as she turned to face Zabuza, he finished his sequence of hand seals and wordlessly fired 2 pure water dragons. Cudin retaliated with a blast of lightning fired from her mouth. Contrary to her expectation, the electricity was not conducted through the aquatic constructs and took nearly 5 seconds to vaporize them. Fascinating. Your water spells defy the natural order of the world. May have your name as well. Zabuza Momochi, the devil of the hidden mist, grunted and barely got Kubikiribocho into position in time to block another of Cudin's claw strikes. This time, he channeled chakra through his feet to remain stuck to the ground and held firm against Cudin's attack. The pair exchanged over 100 blows in the next 10 seconds, Zabuza's skeleton rattled with each one. Growing tired of the stalemate, Cudin grabbed Kubikiribocho and channeled an immense amount of lightning through it. In that same instant, some of the water-forming Zabuza's right arm flowed through the blade, increasing both its cutting power and resistance to electricity. The divine ice water and Cudin's lightning were, for the moment, evenly matched, forcing a stalemate of a different kind. Before Cudin could overpower Zabuza's arm, a human-sized mass of water slammed into her and immediately froze into living ice. Haku smirked as her Hayubushin strangled Cudin like a multi-headed anaconda. The ice construct formed several serrated tendrils around her neck and limbs, and Zabuza took the opportunity to pour over half his arm onto Kubikiribocho and delivered a vertical slash with all the force of a rampaging waterfall. Cudin destroyed the Hayubushin just in time to leap away from the baleful strike. You dodged. Haku smiled, but her grin did not reach her eyes. Forgive my arrogance, but my name is Haku Yuki. An honor and a pleasure. Cudin replied with a half bow. Despite my efforts, you have all survived long enough to prove yourself as warriors worthy of my full attention. Cudin's facial tiger stripes vanished and a blood-red lightning aura stormed around her. For a few moments, Cudin was invisible within the storm of her own power, but the electric aura soon condensed into a thick, yet transparent, shroud of energy around her skin. The air grinded against itself under the pressure of Cudin's Yuki, and micro-thunderstorms spontaneously flickered in and out of existence all over the anti-Yukai field. At present, I am restricted to 5% of my full power. Until now, however, I was only using 2% of it. Cudin took several moments to bask in Team 9's horror as they realized her might had more than doubled. Please, do try to survive the next minute. Without further warning, a lightning bolt aimed at Haku's head struck out from Cudin's aura. If the descendant of Karaukami hadn't used to the interlude prepare an immense amount of Hyouten chakra, she would have died before she could create a pure ice wall to defend herself. The wall's durability was comparable to the mirrors created by Maku Hyusho, but it shattered almost as soon as the lightning bolt dissipated, revealing a panting Haku. You took that well, but it clearly required a great deal of effort. Cudin's critique was cut off when she was slammed into the ground by a pure water dragon nearly as large as her bestial form. Knowing that he needed to end this fight as quickly as possible, Zabuza threw caution to the wind and poured all his remaining chakra into his new jutsu, Uja no Suiryu. Relying on sheer brute force. Cudin's indifferent words resonated throughout the anti-Yukai field. How inelegant. Her aura condensed into a sphere of lightning and fired itself through the water dragon. The pure water greatly diluted the sphere's potency, but it was still able to fully penetrate the serpentine construct faster than Zabuza could react. His body stiffened like a wooden board as he was struck by the demonic lightning. After he fell, his body twitched several times but did not rise. Zabuza-sama. Haku raced toward her master's side and conjured an ice chrysalis around him, just as she had when he first fought Team 7. She fully expected to be killed in the process, but Cudin busied herself by toying with Tenten. The lightning Daiyoukai fire bolt after bolt just slowly enough for Tenten to dodge. Though she evaded the lightning, the superheated air seared her flesh and the pain dulled her movements. After the 15th lightning strike, Tenten tripped and would have died from the 16th strike if Haku hadn't protected her with another ice wall. The barrier drained what remained of Haku's chakra and she collapsed, barely able to stay conscious. And you are all alone, Tenten-san. Cudin purred. The first of your comrades has 1 foot in the grave, the second is too exhausted to move, and the third will not be able to maintain the anti-Yukai field much longer. Tenten risked a glance at Medusa and saw that Cudin was right. The barrage of lightning attacks had blown several holes in her defensive dome and struck 3 of the purification stones. The abused stones now shone only half as bright as their unaffected counterparts. Medusa had rerouted half of the mana she was using to maintain the dome to purge the Yuki from the 3 stones, but the effort was wreaking havoc on her reserves. Sweat was pouring down the Gorgon's face and her panting could be heard from Tenten's position. I estimate that you have 2 minutes, at best, before this accursed array implodes and I am restored to my full glory. From what I have seen, you are the most agile of your group but the least powerful. If you surrender now, I vow on my honor as a warrior to grant you and your comrades a painless death. Cudin slightly relaxed her aura, expecting Tenten to comply but wary of other possibilities. I can't do that. Tenten smiled through her pain and struggled to stand. And why not? Cudin sighed. This part of the battle was normally filled with speeches of how humans couldn't possibly allow Yukai to live for any number of reasons. Because I'm not fighting just for me. Tenten pulled herself off the ground but was having immense difficulty maintaining her typical posture. One of her knees kissed the ground once more. Then tell me, why do you persist? Cudin roared. Why do you willingly subject yourself to unknowable agony? Why do you damn those who would mourn you to unbearable grief? Your preparations show that you knew what I am, knew what I was capable of. Why are you here? Why have you come, knowing you would die? The Daiyoukai screamed her questions, but she was no longer facing Tenten. Instead, her gaze was turned to the heavens, as if she were interrogating someone no longer among the living. Tenten's eyes blazed with defiance. She refused to die kneeling on the ground and commanded her body with every fiber of her being to fucking stand tall. Through sheer willpower, she rose to her full height. Her next words were spoken with all the calm of a hurricane's eye. I am here, for those I love. My family, my friends, and the one I wish to spend the rest of my life with. The warlock cast one of the Yuki spells that was seared into her mind by Tutusai and then weaved a series of hand seals. Fusa. Tenten fired 2 chakra chains at each of the 3 stricken purification stones. The chains struck their targets with great force and remained in contact for several seconds. Cudin watched in awe as her Yuki was drawn out of the stones and sealed into the chains. The anti-Yuki field stabilized instantly. A valiant effort, but you merely delay the inevita. Cudin's eyes nearly left their sockets when Tenten retracted the chains into her body. The Yukai spell she had cast on herself earlier allowed her to drain the Yuki from anything she touched. Since she had fired them from her hands, the chain's tips came into contact with her hands when she reeled them in. Under normal circumstances, a Daiyukai's Yuki was far too powerful for any human to safely absorb, warlock or not, but the purification stones and Medusa's mana had greatly diluted Cudin's energy. Tenten's pain exploded by 3 orders of magnitude, but she survived the absorption and her chakra reserves skyrocketed. The one you love, he is worth so much pain. Cudin whispered just loud enough for Tenten to hear. The young woman shook her head. He doesn't know the depth of my feelings yet, but he's worth at least 1,000 times more than this. Tenten hadn't realized that her feelings for Naruto had grown so quickly, but seeing the man who had done so much for Konoha, so much for her, lie all but lifeless in the hospital ignited an inferno in her heart. Perhaps things wouldn't work out between them, but she would never forgive herself if she didn't devote her entire being to ensuring that, once he recovered, he could fight his enemies with his entire arsenal. Her pride as a blacksmith, her honor as a shinobi of Konoha, and her hammering heart all demanded it. Tenten weaved a set of hand seals that seemed rudimentary, even primitive, compared to the ones Team 9 used earlier. Cudin's jaw hit the floor. That spell, it cannot be. Fuinjutsu. Kongo Fusa. Sealing technique. Adamantine sealing chains, 12 golden chains, fueled by a seemingly impossible combination of divine chakra and Yuki, ensnared Cudin and bound her limbs and torso. She could have dodged, could have hardened her aura to block, or she could have intercepted them with any of 100 different lightning attacks, but she did none of those things. Only her head remained unbound. The chains felt like the icy hands of the Shinigami smothering her entire being, yet Cudin did not even try to resist. All of the chakra she could spare had been poured into her jutsu, but Tenten wasn't done. She manipulated one of Kumanekoso's wires to grab one of the only 2 storage scrolls she had brought with her to this fight and threw it on the ground. The wire was then used to push the scroll open and Tenten channeled the chakra she needed to live into the scroll. With a puff of smoke, her first weapon made from yukai bones, a naginata, appeared. She then twitched her left forefinger, and one of the chains around Cudin's chest moved slightly out of place, exposing her heart. As black spots appeared in her vision, Tenten used everything she had left to hurl the naginata at the gap she had made. The blade struck true, but Tenten had underestimated the durability of Cudin's armor. The naginata pierced her cuirass and invaded her flesh, but it lacked the inertia to penetrate her heart. Damn, guess that's it for me. Tenten's vision was fading to black, but she barely made out Cudin's form closing in on her. I'll see you on the other side, Naruto-kun. Rather than the peaceful drift into oblivion she expected, Tenten was brutally forced into wakefulness. She tried to scream in pain but was shocked to discover that her mouth was gagged. Before she could even think to spit whatever was clogging her throat out, her vision returned and she saw that the offending substance was a fragment of one of her own golden chains. The chakra construct dissolved in her mouth, and since it was technically retracted into her body when it dispersed, the chakra did not dissipate into the atmosphere but was instead returned to Tenten, saving her life. Foolish girl, your actions are an inversion. My mistake. Cudin wept. If the man you love with all your being still lives, then don't you dare throw your life away until he acknowledges your feelings. Be it acceptance or rejection, do not leave this world until you have an answer. Once Tenten's life was no longer in jeopardy, Cudin limped over to Zabuza's ice chrysalis and shattered it with one punch. She then placed her right hand over his heart and drained her electric yuki out of him. The leader of Team 9 flinched several times, but his breathing eventually assumed the pattern of a healthy, albeit exhausted, adult. What are you? Silence. Cudin cried. A few moments later, she wiped away her tears and began to speak in a tightly controlled voice. More thousands of years ago than most would dare to count, I loved another yukai. His name was Hidden, and he cared nothing for me, or any female for that matter. This I knew, but still my heart would not allow me to move on. One day Hidden and his brother were slain. It was an honorable death on the battlefield against a worthy foe, yet my heart screamed for vengeance. Tenten gulped, fearing where this story would go. The shinobi world was fraught with cycles of revenge. At the time, I was far weaker than Hidden, so one capable of killing him was beyond my reach. For the next 100 years, I put myself through hell to increase my power and refine my skills. Then, I tracked my target down, though he proved easy to find. And you killed him? Tenten guessed. Cudin shook her head ruefully. My power had increased so much that I was incomparable to myself from a century before, but the same held true for the one I sought to kill. He was too much. Inuyasha, the Hanyu child of the legendary Daiyoukai Toga, was too much. For a long time, I did not know why he spared my life. I thought it was weakness, a legacy of his human half, and I scorned him for it. For the next 1,000 years a cycle of bettering myself, challenging Inuyasha, and losing despite it all repeated itself without end. At the end of that dreadful millennium, everything changed. Cudin stopped speaking for several moments and silently wept. When she collected herself enough to continue, her voice was quivering. My final confrontation with Inuyasha ended in his death, but I had not won. The ravages of time had accomplished what I constantly failed to achieve. On that day, Inuyasha was barely able to stand, his body crippled by age and disease. He was accompanied by his descendants, who bore witness to our duel. I shall never forget what his most recent granddaughter told me that day. She said, "Congratulations, you robbed a clan of its founder, a family of their great-grandfather, and a man who deserved a merciful end of a peaceful death. All for the sake of a monster that was incapable of returning your feelings. I wasted my life, chained to a bond that was never meant to be, and in the end, I destroyed another's precious bonds." Tenten was crying now too. Did Inuyasha's clan seek revenge? Worse, Cudin denied, they inflicted upon me the greatest insult an enemy can suffer, to be ignored. They destroyed the cycle of revenge and left me alone to face what I had done. Since that day, All I have wished for is to die, but none have been strong enough. Yukai or humans, no matter their strength or skill, all have fallen before me. Until now. Cudin had thrown Tenten's naginata aside when she rushed to save the young woman's life. Now she picked it up and aimed its blade at her heart. Aside from your group, the only one who came close to killing me was a warrior wielding those same golden chains. Had he not relied exclusively upon them, he may well have claimed my head. No one has come as close to killing me as the four of you have. It is enough. I know not why you have come for me this day, but what you seek is now yours. Cudin slammed the blade into her heart and fell to the ground. As the Daiyoukai started to breathe her last, Tenten asked one last question. Is there anything special to you about this place? Cudin did her best to laugh, coughing up a large globe of blood in the process. The very center of your anti-Yukai field is the spot upon which Hidden was slain. After finishing her answer, Cudin died. Medusa deactivated the anti-Yukai field, and the purification stones all shattered. Though only 3 of the stones had been directly affected by Cudin's Yuki, the entire field suffered due to their exposure. Medusa's and Tenten's efforts allowed it to momentarily remain active, but Cudin's power ruined it for future use. The blood-red cumulonimbus cloud became alive with crimson lightning. With a flash that illuminated the entire horizon, the cloud was converted entirely to lightning and absorbed into Cudin's body. The fallen Daiyoukai did not rise, but her corpse was restored to its bestial state. The hundreds of fangs in her mouth gleamed silver. Tenten's instincts as a blacksmith told her that these fangs would never decay. Before she could reflect further on what she'd just been through, the granddaughter of Hephaestus swooned and fell off her feet. Easy does it, Tenten. Medusa caught the genin before she hit the ground and placed a vial filled with her right-sided blood to Tenten's mouth. The Gorgon had prepared 6 such vials before Team 9 left to kill Cudin. Once Tenten drank her too, Medusa flew to Zabuza's side. Unfortunately, Zabuza was still unconscious and Medusa's attempts to rouse him ended in failure. To Hades with it. Medusa drank one of the vials and kissed Zabuza, forcing the contents down his throat. The devil of the hidden mist was still unconscious, so Medusa repeated the process with the second vial allotted to him. After drinking her own vials, Haku stared daggers into Medusa's head. She had been too drained to move, but she managed to stay conscious for the entire fight and its aftermath and saw what Medusa did. The Gorgon was unimpressed by the last Yuki's murderous glare. Cease acting like a child. My actions saved Zabuza's life and I highly doubt he has not known a woman before me. And you expect me to believe that what I just saw was strictly professional? Haku's voice was as cold as her clan's namesake. And what would you do, if your suspicions were correct? Medusa's voice was even, betraying nothing of her intentions. Zabuza is his own person. What he chooses to make of what has transpired is his concern, not yours. Haku seethed but averted her gaze, conceding the point. Tenten-chan, how did you use those chains? To my knowledge, only the Uzumaki clan is capable of producing them and they're all but extinct. Tenten chuckled while returning her naginata to its scroll. You're familiar with Tsunade Hime of the Sanin, right? Haku nodded. Zabuza had informed her of the most powerful shinobi in each elemental nation in the event that they had to fight any of them. Well, I idolized her growing up. Tenten continued. I wanted to be a medical ninja just like her, but I don't have the necessary chakra control for it. What I do have is a very strong affinity for fuinjutsu, something the Uzumaki were renowned for. Konoha and the Uzumaki clans used to be very close allies. It took more than a little digging through the academy library, but I found a book detailing some of their techniques. Even though I didn't, and still don't, have the chakra to use them, I memorized all the hand seals. It gives me something to aspire to. After finishing her explanation, Tenten grabbed the second of the 2 storage scrolls she had with her and walked to Cudin. With an immense amount of chakra, Cudin's body was sealed into the scroll. Well, let's get back to Tutusai. Tenten panted. Indeed. Medusa agreed as the crane reactivated itself. Tenten and Haku boarded the mechanical bird while Medusa unfurled her wings and hoisted Zabuza into a bridal carry. Tenten grabbed Haku's shoulder before she could protest. The alternatives are either waiting who knows how long until he wakes up or tying him to the crane. Haku had no response to that. The crane flew well below the speed of sound on the return trip to conserve its mana for the ride back to Konoha. Consequently, the trip took nearly 3 hours instead of less than 1. Once they reached Tutusai's home, Zabuza was deposited in the Yukai blacksmith's bed. Survived, did you? Very good. Tutusai beamed. Now, where are the fangs? Tenten moved just beyond the door of Tutusai's home and released Cudin from her scroll. Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. Tutusai marveled over the quality of Cudin's fangs. Once he regained his composure, he conjured a hammer and knocked one of the fangs out of Cudin's mouth. Pay close attention, Tenten-chan. Like you said earlier, the way we'll restore Tokujin is to heat him to a near-molten state and add enough of the fang to him to replace what he's lost. Given the quality of this fang, I can do one better though. Tutusai began walking toward his forge. I'm going to bring the fang to a near-molten state as well and completely merge it with Tokujin. Most of the fang's yuki will be used to purge the blessing poisoning Tokujin, so this won't make him stronger, but it'll increase his resistance to divine weapons. You did good forging that Naginata, but Tokujin's too powerful for you to work with at the moment, so stay by my side and learn. 12 p.m. Tanzaku-gai, unnamed restaurant. Tsunade-sama, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Shizune asked as she and her master sat down to eat. In an inconceivable stroke of good luck, the last Senju had just cleaned out the largest gambling hall in the bustling town. If she had not been using a henge to disguise her normal appearance, she would have been arrested for cheating by the town watch after they were called by the gambling hall's owner. Since she had concealed her typical appearance, there was no reason to leave when she had hit her first winning streak ever. We're leaving because I won so much. Tsunade responded. I don't get lucky. Ever. Ever since Dan's death, Tsunade had become convinced that fate would never stop dealing her a bad hand. If things seemed to be looking up, it was only the prelude to an enormous fall. Tsunade laid a few bills of Ryu on the table as her and Shizune's food arrived. As soon as we're done eating, I'm taking us as far away from this town as Posi. Leaving so soon, Tsunade-chan? Jiraiya interrupted as he and Sasuke walked toward Tsunade's table. Jiraiya, why am I not surprised? Tsunade sighed. Congratulations on your first winning streak ever. Under different circumstances, I'd throw a party for you, but this isn't a social call. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed as he and Sasuke sat down. I see you've raised the standards of your spies. Tsunade grunted. Even before she had left the village, Jiraiya had been Konoha's spymaster. What do you want with me? Orochimaru attacked Konoha and nearly killed Hiruzen-sensei. Jiraiya replied tersely. We lost a lot of good people during the attack and the old monkey's stepping down to take a more personal approach in training the next generation. He nominated you as his successor. Not interested, Tsunade said flatly. I washed my hands of Konoha years ago. I won't go back now, certainly not to be its next Hokage. Why not? You scared of having some actual responsibility again? Sasuke cut in. Shizune gasped as Tsunade turned to meet the last Uchiha's gaze. And you are? Sasuke Uchiha, the young man answered. Well, Sasuke-kun, life is different than money, it can't be gambled recklessly. Whoever does so is a king of fools. Tsunade sighed. To be Hokage is to risk your life for Konoha's sake. I'll have nothing to do such an idiotic job. You've changed, Tsunade. Jiraiya grimaced. The old you would never have said anything like that. Before Tsunade could respond, Sasuke stood up. Let's go home, Jiraiya-san. The genin sighed. Tsunade gave you her answer, and I doubt anything you or I can say will change her mind. Even if we dragged her back to Konoha kicking and screaming, she'd be a terrible Hokage. After seeing her, I can say with confidence that I'd rather have Yugura Dono, the blood tyrant of Kiri, as our leader than this worthless hag. That's too far, Sasuke-kun. Jiraiya reprimanded. Tsunade's been through hell, and that changes people in ways you can't possibly. Say that again, I dare you. Sasuke roared as his Sharingan blazed into existence. In his haste to defend his old friend, and crush Jiraiya had forgotten about Sasuke's past. After the Toad Sannin closed his mouth, Sasuke resumed his speech. Tsunade's an embarrassment to her clan. Shizune's jaw hit the floor, but Sasuke was far from done. He held up one finger before continuing. First, you abandoned Konoha at the height of the Third Shinobi World War, dooming hundreds, if not thousands, of shinobi to die that might have otherwise lived due to your medical skills. Sasuke held up a second finger. Then, you spend all the time since the war's end crawling from casino to casino gambling your clan's money. If not for the tremendous Senju fortune, you'd have been in unrecoverable debt ages ago. That money may be your inheritance as the last living Senju, but you insult all your ancestors by throwing it away like that. You clearly have no idea who you're talking to, brat. Tsunade hissed. I suggest you shut up before you. I know exactly who I'm talking to. A washed-up, pathetic excuse for a Sanin. Sasuke retorted while raising a third finger. And now, after hearing that your sensei nearly died defending Konoha against a former comrade of yours, you refuse his nomination and once again abandon your home in its time of need. My sensei taught me that those who abandon their comrades are less than trash. Hashirama-sama must be weeping in his grave seeing the complete failure his granddaughter has become. In a flash of movement, Tsunade grabbed Sasuke by the scruff of his neck and threw him through the restaurant doors onto the street outside. Tsunade-sama. Shizune screamed, but her plea fell on ears deafened by rage. Insults to herself, she could endure, but even after all this time, Tsunade still had her pride as a Senju, and Sasuke had just trampled all over it. She stomped to the restaurant's entrance, trailed closely by Shizune and Jiraiya. For the moment, Jiraiya was willing to let this play out and would only intervene if Sasuke's life was in jeopardy. The wolf Hanyu was unfazed by Tsunade's attack. She had only used the minimum amount of force needed for the throw and Sasuke's demonic physiology was more than capable of withstanding it. As Tsunade exited the restaurant, Sasuke entered a typical Uchiha fighting stance. I'll give you one's chance, boy. Tsunade said through gritted teeth. Take back what you said about my grandfather. My best friend never goes back on his word, and neither do I. Sasuke refused. You may have been worthy of the Senju name once, but the woman standing in front of me damn well isn't and never will be again. Tsunade cracked her knuckles. Don't worry, brat, I'll only break half your ribs. The slug Sanin lunged at Sasuke at a speed comparable to Lee without his weights. Her smirk died when Sasuke slapped her fist aside and countered with a brutal gut punch. Spit flew from Tsunade's mouth as she was sent flying back nearly a dozen feet. Impossible. Shizune's jaw hit the floor. Though Tsunade's strength had dwindled considerably during her self-imposed exile, a genin should not be capable of overpowering her, even if she's holding back. For most humans, certainly, Jiraiya allowed, but Sasuke-kun recently became considerably more than human. Even Tsunade will have to take him a little bit seriously if she wants to win this. More than human. Shizune echoed, more out of medical curiosity than revulsion. That said, what happened back there isn't his style at all. Jiraiya ignored the question. The Senju and Uchiha clans used to be bitter enemies. Sasuke doesn't normally care much for clan honor, but seeing the last living member of one of the few clans the Uchiha ever acknowledged as a worthy foe act like Tsunade did must have offended him greatly. Makes sense, given that Uchiha's reputation is now his to protect and restore. Shizune looked Sasuke in a new light after hearing this. During their travels, Tsunade and Shizune had heard of the Uchiha massacre. Though she would never say as much to Tsunade, Shizune knew that her master's actions during the past several years were deplorable, especially for a direct descendant of Hashirama. If Sasuke's insults were meant to appeal to Tsunade's pride, Shizune couldn't think ill of the boy. Not bad, kid. Tsunade stood up and slightly calmed down. Is there more where that came from? Plenty. Sasuke rushed at Tsunade, who leapt to intercept him with so much force her jump left a crater in the street. With his Sharingan, Sasuke could see that Tsunade was moving nearly twice as fast as before and he barely managed to block her punch. When he impacted the ground, he made a crater 3 times deeper than the one made from Tsunade's jump. You took that well, Tsunade praised. You're either far tougher than you look or I've really lost my touch. A bit of both, if you ask me. Sasuke shakily climbed out of the hole. I can't take another hit like that and she's too fast for me to dodge. Chidori and my strongest Kaden jutsu are off the table because I don't want to kill her and my other jutsu are too weak to make a difference. There's only one thing left to try, even if I haven't mastered it yet. Sasuke began running toward Tsunade and formed the Rasengan in his right hand. That jutsu. Tsunade was shocked by the Rasengan's appearance but quickly regained her composure and slammed one finger into the ground, splitting the street in two. Sasuke leapt into the air just before the shattered earth caused him to trip. Ha! Sasuke knew he couldn't maintain the Rasengan's form for more than a few seconds after he increased its power past a certain point, so he didn't try. He abandoned the rotation stage almost entirely, and the Rasengan became a nearly static ball in his hand instead of a spiraling sphere. No. Jiraiya rushed to Sasuke's position, but it was too late. Without the rotation to guide its immense power and with no spherical shell of chakra to contain it, the Rasengan was little more than a chakra bomb that had virtually no fuse. A bomb that now detonated in the instant before Sasuke and Tsunade collided. The slug Sannin recognized the danger and was able to avoid the explosion, but Sasuke was far less fortunate. The blast sent him flying backward at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. Iero Ninjutsu. Ongatsui. Medical ninja technique. Graceful fall, Shizune blurred into Sasuke's flight path and exhaled a pale green, translucent mass of liquid that intercepted the Hanyu. The liquid was incredibly viscous and absorbed the full force of Sasuke's impact, embracing him as a mother would an injured child. Sasuke retained consciousness for a few moments after colliding with Shizune's jutsu, but he blacked out before Jiraiya fished him out of the fluid that had saved his life. HMPH. Serves the pompous brat right for trying to use the Yondaim's Ju. Tsunade's derisive demeanor transmuted into horror as she beheld Sasuke's right forearm. The limb was pulverized and blood was gushing from it like wine juice from a squeezed grape. The bones were miraculously still intact but the forearm's muscles were almost completely crushed. And no. Tsunade shivered and fell limply to the ground. Damn it. She still has her hemophobia. Jiraiya cursed before he knocked Tsunade unconscious with a neck chop and turned to face Shizune. No hospital in this town is equipped to treat an injury like this. With Tsunade out of commission, it has to be you. Then we need to get back to the hotel room I share with Tsunade-sama, my medical supplies are all there. Shizune picked Sasuke up and ran to her in as quickly as possible without further injuring Sasuke. Jiraiya hoisted Tsunade over his shoulder and followed Shizune. 30 minutes later. Damn it, the damage is too much. Shizune swore. Once they arrived in her room, Jiraiya used a Douden jutsu to create a makeshift operating table. Tsunade was sleeping in one of the room's 2 beds. Jiraiya was sitting on the other. He was out of his element now, and all he could do was trust in Shizune. The Jonin had managed to stop the bleeding and was now trying to regenerate Sasuke's devastated muscles, but misused Rasengan had destroyed them so thoroughly that she might as well have been building them from scratch. Like all Jonin, Shizune boasted considerable chakra reserves, but she was no Senju or Uzumaki. An injury like Sasuke's typically required at least a dozen medical ninja working in shifts over hours, or even days, to slowly heal. Shizune was trying to replicate that feat alone, but she didn't have nearly enough chakra. If he could do so safely, Jiraiya would gladly have transferred his chakra to Shizune. The Toad Sage had more chakra than almost anyone who wasn't a Kage, but a chakra infusion would disrupt the delicate control that Shizune needed for her medical ninjutsu to work. Sweat poured from her forehead as she tried desperately to heal Sasuke, but she soon bowed before the inevitable conclusion and stopped. I'm sorry, Jiraiya-sama, but I can't heal him. We have to amputate his arm or he'll bleed out. As soon as Shizune cancelled her healing jutsu, blood began flowing out of Sasuke's arm once more. Jiraiya nodded grimly, but before he could move to assist Shizune in the amputation, Tsunade stood up. Move. Tsunade ordered in a tightly controlled voice. Shizune wordlessly complied. She knew better than to argue when her master spoke in that tone. How long? Jiraiya asked now that he knew Tsunade had been conscious for at least part of the operation. Long enough to steal myself. Tsunade answered bluntly after occupying the spot Shizune had just vacated. It won't last. An enormous amount of light green chakra flooded out of her hands and into Sasuke's mutilated arm. Seconds later, even more chakra enveloped his arm like a cocoon. For 10 minutes, Tsunade maintained her jutsu, and her stone-cold glare never left the ravaged limb. The second after the last of those 10 minutes ended, As if a light switch had been turned off, Tsunade began shivering like a leaf and her jutsu shattered. Knock her out again, Jiraiya-sama. I can take it from here. Shizune had eaten a food pill after Tsunade took over. With a considerable portion of her chakra replenished, she could finish the operation. Jiraiya once again ended Tsunade's suffering and placed her back on the bed. Another hour passed before the operation was complete. Sasuke's arm was restored, and there would be no lasting side effects, but the limb's nerves were now extremely sensitive and he would be in immense pain until they desensitized themselves. The boy was now unconscious, a small mercy. Tsunade was still asleep as well, but her eyelids were twitching rapidly, a sign of intense dreaming. She's having a nightmare, isn't she? Jiraiya asked Shizune. Yes, she's had one every time she's had to help me with a surgery since we left Konoha. This was by far the most intensive operation. Then thank Kami she has enough steel in her veins to keep her fear under control long enough to allow you to pick up the pieces once she can't handle it anymore. Jiraiya sighed. Shizune shook her head. You've got it backwards, Jiraiya-sama. She's never lasted 10 minutes before. The longest she's been able to hold out before today was 4 minutes. Before you ask, she would have needed to last at least 8 minutes today for me to have any chance of saving the full use of Sasuke's arm. Jiraiya's eyes became saucers. I don't condone Sasuke's insults, he spoke softly, but from what you just said they seem to have had the desired effect. I hope so, Shizune pleaded. 8 p.m. So, are going to tell me why you taught that kid a technique he has no business using? Tsunade, now mostly recovered from the day's events, glared at Jiraiya. The pair were seated at the same table they'd met at earlier. At first, the restaurant's owner had refused to serve them again, but a donation, containing half of Tsunade's winnings changed his mind. I wouldn't say that. Sasuke-kun mastered the Rasengan's first 2 stages in a week and is well on his way to mastering the 3rd stage. Jiraiya rebuked. He knew what would happen if sacrificed rotation for power, but, if I had to guess, I'd say in the heat of the moment he didn't care as long as he got through to you. He also likely had enough confidence in your medical skills and his own body to do something incredibly stupid. What do you mean, his body? Tsunade asked. Before answering, Jiraiya cast 3 privacy seals on their booth. Sasuke-kun's a Hanyu. What? How? Tsunade hissed. It was my godson, Naruto Namikaze. Suon's jaw dropped after hearing Jiraiya's answer. Minato never breathed a word of it to me, but the Namikaze clan is descended from one of the most powerful Daiyoukai to ever exist. Minato had next to zero affinity for his progenitor's power, but Naruto has the highest affinity for it in the history of the clan. Jiraiya explained. Naruto and Sasuke-kun ran into Orochimaru during the Chunin exams and the fucking snake put a cursed seal on Sasuke-kun. I don't know exactly how he did it, but Naruto turned Sasuke-kun into a Hanyu to destroy the cursed seal. With a single-hand seal, Tsunade dispelled Jiraiya's privacy seals as a server approached with their meals. Once the server left, she reapplied them. After downing a glass of sake, the slug Sanin sighed in annoyance. Then it's no wonder he felt cocky enough to misuse the Rasengan. Between his superhuman durability and my medical skills, it would have been a fairly safe bet if not for my condition. Jiraiya nodded. He hadn't told Sasuke about Tsunade's hemophobia. If the genin had known, he wouldn't have pushed his luck to such an absurd degree. For that reason, Jiraiya felt he had no right to berate Sasuke for his reckless behavior. Not this time, at least. For the next several minutes, the pair ate in silence. After healing Sasuke-kun, I dreamed of Dan. Tsunade resumed the conversation after her plate was empty. Jiraiya blanched. Only one memory involving Dan would cause Tsunade to have a nightmare. I see a little bit of Dan in Sasuke-kun. Tsunade continued. Both fought for what they felt was right, regardless of personal risk. It's refreshing to see someone have so much pride for what they believe in. You once had a similar amount of passion. Jiraiya replied, his meal also now finished. Personally, I prefer the old you to the jaded woman I spoke with earlier today. The toad sage dispelled the privacy seals again, left a few bills of Ryu on the table to pay for their meals, and left. So do I. Before she stood up to follow Jiraiya back to the inn, a single tear fell from Tsunade's face. When the pair returned to the inn, they were shocked to Sasuke sitting up in his bed, his eyes closed in concentration. The storage scroll holding the balloons needed to master the Rasengan's third stage lay open in his lap, and he held one such balloon in his left hand. Dozens of popped balloons littered the bed and floor. Sasuke's latest attempt popped 2 seconds after Jiraiya and Tsunade opened the door. Shizune was asleep in the other bed. The day's events had exhausted her both mentally and physically. What the fuck are you doing? Tsunade roared. Learning to use the Rasengan without blasting my arm to hell. Sasuke groaned. It passes the time and keeps my mind off the pain. I don't think so. You're my patient now, my responsibility. No more training until you're fully recovered. Tsunade ordered. What's the harm? Sasuke accused. I'm not using my right arm at all. The harm, idiot, is that your body needs rest. Tsunade shouted. You lost a huge amount of blood. Worse, I had to damn near regrow your arm muscles from scratch, which caused a massive depletion of your vital nutrients. You don't feel it now because the pain is masking it, but you're too weak to even get out of that bed. That may be, but it's also true that Sasuke needs a way to dull his pain. Jiraiya countered. No healthy dosage of painkillers will help him through this. If continuing his Rasengan training serves as a distraction, it'll do more good than harm in the long run. A vein throbbed in Tsunade's temple as she thought it over. She knew Jiraiya was right, but the intense training needed for the Rasengan had to be carefully balanced against Sasuke's other medical needs. You get 2 hours of training a day, in 1-hour increments, and they have to be at least 6 hours apart. She decreed stiffly. Sasuke nodded, knowing better than to push his luck any further after hearing about his malnutrition. Here. Jiraiya handed Tsunade a map of Tanzakugai with several buildings circled in red ink. The marked buildings are 24-hour stores and restaurants. Between them all, you should have no problem buying the food and medicine Sasuke needs. Thank you. Tsunade flashed Jiraiya a quick smile before leaving the room. You just had that map on hand. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Being Konoha's spymaster has its perks. Jiraiya grinned back. It took Tsunade an hour and a half to purchase everything she needed. When she returned to the inn, Sasuke and Jiraiya were both asleep. The toad sage was on the floor, and Shizune had been moved to the left side of her bed from her original position at the bed's center. Unlike Sasuke's bed, which was twin size, Shizune's was a full-sized bed. The right side covers had been unfurled, allowing Tsunade to lie down with minimal interference to Shizune. When did the pervert become such a gentleman? Tsunade pondered as she climbed into bed and fell asleep. 6 nights later. Jiraiya and Tsunade were dining in the same restaurant as before. Their meals were eaten and paid for, and now Tsunade looked into Jiraiya's eyes with a gaze of pure steel. Sasuke-kun still has some stiffness in his right arm, but other than that he's fully recovered. I've decided to return to Konoha, so there's no more reason for us to stay here after tonight. Jiraiya breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you so much, Tsunade. You've no idea how glad I am to I'm coming back with you, but I can't be Hokage, not yet. Tsunade interrupted. Konoha deserves a leader who won't freeze at the sight of blood. Before I assume Hiruzen-sensei's role, I must purge myself of this fear completely. Jiraiya reflected on the past few days before responding. Sasuke had followed Tsunade's orders perfectly, but his wounds had reopened 4 times. Each time, Tsunade had healed him, and each night afterward, she suffered another nightmare. Jiraiya had stayed awake through the night each time she had a nightmare, ready to intervene if things took a turn for the worst. To his joy, each subsequent nightmare ended faster than its predecessor, and each nightmare seemed less intense than those that came before it. Shizune had also stayed up on those nights and she and Jiraiya were in agreement. Tsunade was steadily conquering her hemophobia. How do you plan to do that? Jiraiya asked. Even now, there must be several shinobi in intensive care. Tsunade paused long enough for Jiraiya to nod in affirmation. I will heal them, every last one. Hemophobia be damned. Expose yourself to the sensation so many times that you become desensitized to it. Jiraiya mused. Normally, I'd say an approach like that is at least as likely to backfire as it is to work in your favor, but, Now that Sasuke-kun's rekindled your will of fire, it's just crazy enough to work. Yeah, who'd have thought that what I needed to get over this was the fate of another life in my hands. Tsunade slammed her fist on the table. After all, that's what got me here. Jiraiya placed his hand over Tsunade's fist. You're in a tough place now, but it's much better than it's been and it will continue to improve. We can get through this, together. Tsunade gasped. Jiraiya. Please, I can't. Not after Dan. I can't go through that again. Jiraiya's heart bled upon hearing Tsunade's rejection, but he let the matter drop. As much as he'd like to claim that no one in all the elemental nations could kill him, he knew some of the cage were capable of it and the members of the Akatsuki were mostly unknown to him. He knew there were 9 members total, but Itachi and Kisame were the only names he had. At his peak, Orochimaru would definitely have made the list and he may still qualify even with his poisoned arms. With a defeated sigh, Jiraiya let go of Tsunade's hand and stood to leave. We leave at dawn tomorrow. Get as much rest as we can. Tsunade remained seated for several minutes, fighting back tears. Damn it, Kami, damn it. She sobbed. Jiraiya, Sasuke, Tsunade, and Shizune had made it a few miles back to Konoha before a tremendous surge of killing intent engulfed the area. Orochimaru. Sasuke swore. This murderous aura was not something he'd soon forget. Compass formation. Now. Jiraiya ordered. The 4 shinobi huddled together, shoulder to shoulder, each facing outward in one of the cardinal directions. Jiraiya faced east, Tsunade north, Shizune west, and Sasuke south. The road they were using was flanked on both sides by a sea of trees. The Uchiha activated his Sharingan and focused his superhuman senses. The scent of snakes was everywhere, hindering his efforts to discern Orochimaru's location. For nearly a minute, the Hanyu sifted through the scents around him. Tsunade Heim, look out. His warning was a fraction of a second too late. Orochimaru's serpentine neck lunged out of the forest faster than Tsunade could react. As Jiraiya feared, she was badly out of practice. Before Orochimaru could sink his fangs into her neck, Jiraiya leapt in front of her and took the bite on his shoulder. Tisk. You're nearly as troublesome as Hiruzen-sensei, Jiraiya. Orochimaru retracted his neck and came into the open, trailed closely by Kabuto. The Toad Sage's entire body shivered, and he fell to one knee. What do you think of my venom, old friend? It won't kill you, but manipulating chakra will be all but impossible until it wears off, and, as you're now experiencing firsthand, your muscles will spasm uncontrollably, making it incredibly difficult to move. Difficult. I don't know the meaning of the word. Jiraiya screamed and hoisted himself off the ground through sheer force of will and weaved a series of hand seals. Kaden. Enden. Fire release. Flame bullet, a cylindrical fireball streaked toward Orochimaru, but a giant snake emerged from the forest and intercepted the attack. The snake was reduced to ashes, but his master was unharmed. HMPH. Quite impressive, but with my venom in your veins you won't be able to last much longer. Orochimaru smirked. Kabuto. Kill Shizune and capture both Tsunade and Sasuke. I'll deal with Jiraiya myself. The snake holding the sword of Kusanagi poked its head out of Orochimaru's mouth and regurgitated the blade, gripping its hilt with his jaws. Sasuke-kun. Protect Tsunade-sama. Shizune prepared to fight Kabuto while Sasuke moved in front of Tsunade. When Orochimaru bit into Jiraiya's shoulder, the slug Sanin saw the blood and was currently fighting off another episode of hemophobia. If she had time to prepare herself, or suspected that she may see blood, she could resist her irrational fear with much more success, but this was too sudden for her mental countermeasures to work. All she could do now was struggle to stay conscious and hope that the episode ran its course before the battle was over. Orochimaru warned me about you, Shizune-san. Kabuto grinned. As Tsunade Dano's apprentice, your skill as a medical ninja is exemplary and you excel in using poison during combat. Too bad for you, I'm quite the medical nin myself. 2 chakra scalpels manifested around Kabuto's hands. It's a shame I have to kill you. There are not enough of us medical nin around, after all. But orders are orders. The gray-haired ninja rushed at Shizune. Dokugiri. Poison mist. Shizune exhaled a toxic fog that would instantly kill anyone who inhaled even a small amount. Kabuto was engulfed by the mist but was nowhere to be seen when the fog cleared. The ground beneath Shizune's feet burst open, courtesy of Kabuto's Mogurakage no Jutsu, hiding like a mole technique. Expecting the tactic, Shizune leapt into the air just before Kabuto emerged and fired a volley of poison Senbon from her mouth, but they passed right through Kabuto. A bushin. Shit. Shizune swore as the real Kabuto leapt from the ground beneath her and severed her leg tendons. That's it. I expected more from an apprentice of Tsunade Dono. Kabuto glared at Shizune and moved to sever her right carotid artery, but was halted by a stream of fire launched by Sasuke. Sorry to interrupt, but I owe Shizune-san my life. I wouldn't be right to just stand here and watch you kill her. Sasuke smirked. Jiraiya told me that you were Orochimaru's errand boy. Getting rid of you will be excellent payback for what he did to me in the Forest of Death. Ah yes, that reminds me, how did you pull that off, Sasuke-kun? Orochimaru-sama and I are quite curious. Kabuto moved away from Shizune. Like I told your team of genin, it was consumed by this. Sasuke's chakra yuki flared, and his Hanyu features manifested. Senkin Ensu. Knowing it would be dangerous to engage Kabuto at close range, Sasuke made several slashing motions with his right claws. Dozens of yuki blades sailed through the air. Kabuto dodged them all, but several came very close to hitting him. The chakra in those blades is incredibly potent. How did Sasuke acquire such a powerful transformation? Kabuto had little time to marvel at the display before Sasuke launched an enormous fireball at him. It exploded on impact and created a huge amount of smoke. Kabuto tried to take advantage of the situation to blindside Sasuke, but his right wrist was caught in a bone-crushing grip. Didn't you know? The Sharingan can see chakra. That smokescreen was nowhere near enough to hide you from my eyes. Sasuke tightened his grip even more, nearly bringing Kabuto to his knees. In desperation, Kabuto lashed out at Sasuke's chest with his left hand, but his chakra scalpel barely scratched the wolf Hanyu's chest. The deep laceration to Sasuke's heart muscles never materialized. An eye for an eye, a chest wound for a chest wound. Sasuke held out his left hand, and a Rasengan formed flawlessly within it. Sasuke rammed the deadly orb into Kabuto's ribs. The chakra sphere exploded, and Kabuto was hurled hundreds of feet away. Damn, you're like a cockroach. Sasuke swore as Kabuto climbed slowly to his feet as the damage inflicted by the Rasengan healed. I'll take that as a compliment. After all, what Orochimaru values most in me is my regenerative capability. Rest assured, Sasuke-kun, I'll be taking you much more seri. Kabuto's boasting ceased as he puked up a huge amount of blood and fell back to the ground, conscious but barely able to move. Ha. Looks like my Rasengan caused too much damage for you to heal before your chakra ran out. Sasuke laughed. A huge explosion turned his attention to Orochimaru and Jiraiya's battle, but before he could move to intervene, a wave of fatigue racked his entire body. I can't blame you, given the circumstances, but you overdid it, Sasuke-kun. Tsunade said through gritted teeth as she pulled herself out of her phobia-induced stupor. You've been bedridden for an entire week. Intense exercise after a prolonged period of rest exhausts the body very quickly. Thank you for saving Shizune. Just rest while I deal with my traitorous ex-comrade. At your limit already, Jiraiya. I almost had you that time. Orochimaru's voice echoed all around Jiraiya, but the snake Sannin was nowhere to be seen. As soon as their fight began in earnest, Orochimaru's skin began constantly altering its color to blend in perfectly with his immediate surroundings. The sword of Kusanagi couldn't be camouflaged, but Orochimaru solved that problem by keeping the blade in his mouth and only displaying it an instant before he attacked. With his body ravaged by Orochimaru's venom, it was all Jiraiya could do to evade the sword strikes. Several times, the sword of Kusanagi almost hit a vital organ or blood vessel. The wounds Jiraiya accumulated slowed his movements even more, making it that much harder to survive. Under normal circumstances, Orochimaru's optical camouflage wouldn't have been much of a hurdle for Jiraiya. Though he wasn't a true sensor type, he was skilled enough with yin release to sense chakra in his immediate vicinity. The problem was that Orochimaru wasn't using chakra to camouflage himself. His current technique was derived from his extensive body modifications. The same held true for the venom he used earlier. You've certainly prepared well for this fight, considering you can't use hand seals. Jiraiya panted. Necessity is the mother of invention. Orochimaru agreed. These enhancements were meant to be added to my body before I launched my invasion of Konoha. Sadly, the enzymes and genetic material needed to alter my cells weren't quite ready then, but between the time Kabuto needed to track Tsunade down and how long it took for us to travel here, I had plenty of opportunities to undergo the necessary operations. You experimented on yourself even when your body's already falling apart. You're more desperate than I thought. Jiraiya barely shifted his body in time to avoid another attack. It was a risk, I'll admit, but a necessary one. Orochimaru landed another hit on Jiraiya. For the umpteenth time, the sword of Kusanagi vanished back into his mouth. Just stand still and die, you stubborn toad. You're drenched in sweat and blood. It's a miracle that you still have the strength to stand, but a miracle only happens once. A miracle, you say? Jiraiya grinned while weaving a series of hand seals. I'll show you that this miracle happens twice. Cudin. Banfu. Fire release. Toad flame skin. Clear oil erupted from Jiraiya's pores and ignited, coating his skin in fiery armor. The flames were so hot that the airspace within several feet of Jiraiya rippled, distorting the light in the affected area enough to reveal Orochimaru's position. Impressive, but futile. The snake Sanin willed his blade to extend and impaled Jiraiya through his left knee. Poor Jiraiya, did you forget that the sword of Kusanagi can cut through almost anything? Orochimaru cackled after once again swallowing his sword. Not at all. In fact, I was counting on it. Jiraiya smiled back. In the next instant, a tremendous explosion tore through the forest road with Orochimaru as the epicenter. The snake Sanin barely managed to weave the chakra necessary for his unique version of the Kawarimi no Jutsu to avoid being reduced to ash. Like a snake shedding its skin, the bulk of Orochimaru's form shriveled away from the blast's point of origin and rematerialized several hundred feet away. His life had been spared, but now Orochimaru dropped to one knee, having lost over a third of his chakra. When I swallowed my sword, it had some of that infernal oil on it, which was ignited by the heated blade. Orochimaru noted. But how did that tiny amount of oil cause such a grand explosion? Unless. Orochimaru's eyes widened as he replayed the fight in his mind. Damn you. From the very beginning. You figured it out. Jiraiya dragged himself to his feet and put as much weight as possible on his good leg. When you blocked my first attack with your snake, I took the opportunity to activate Banfu. The hand seals just now were a sideshow. The sweat you pointed out earlier was my oil, and you've been swallowing it the whole time. Not even your souped-up snakes could tell the difference. I commend you for reducing me to such a pitiful state, Orochimaru snarled, but this is my victory. The serpentine shinobi willed his sword to soar through the air, aiming straight for Jiraiya's heart. Not on my watch, Tsunade roared as she grabbed the sword of Kusanagi just before it slammed into Jiraiya. Her Herculean strength was more than sufficient to halt the blade's telekinetic movement. She then turned to Orochimaru and poured half her remaining chakra into her free fist. Not good. Orochimaru swore as Tsunade leapt toward him like a meteor. With all his remaining chakra, the snake Sanin willed his blade away from him. The sudden reversal of the blade's trajectory compared to Tsunade's was just enough to let Orochimaru avoid the fatal punch, but its impact on the ground still sent him flying and ravaged his body. Neat trick. Tsunade dropped the blade now that she sensed that Orochimaru was powerless, but it won't save you a second time. As Tsunade launched herself at Orochimaru once more, dozens of giant snakes emerged from their hiding places within the forests surrounding the road and converged on her. No. Tsunade did her best to destroy the massive serpents as quickly as possible and was aided by Sasuke and Shizune, who had healed herself from Kabuto's ambush, but the damage was done. Kabuto had recovered enough to retrieve the sword of Kusanagi and shunshun his master to safety. Damn it! Tsunade screeched. Before she could vent any more, Shizune began healing Jiraiya's wounds. The slug Sanin calmed herself down and joined her apprentice. While the two medical ninja tended to Jiraiya, Sasuke summoned 4 tents from the storage scroll previously used to hold the balloons for the Rasengan's third stage. He didn't know how long it would take for Tsunade and Shizune to stabilize Jiraiya, but he was certain they wouldn't be traveling anymore today. We were so close. Kabuto yelled. He was now moving at a much faster pace than he and Orochimaru had used to travel to Tanzaku-gai. The poison in Orochimaru's arms would surely spread. if it hadn't already due to the fight. But Kabuto needed Otokage's medical facilities to save Orochimaru. Indeed, but this is no cause for alarm, Kabuto. Orochimaru said in a surprisingly content voice, given the day's events. After all, there's another way for me to restore my arms. But without a cursed seal, it will be nearly impossible to persuade Sasuke-kun to come your side willingly. Kabuto lamented. It matters not. The Sound Four will be mobilized the instant we return home. Even if the worst should pass and I must transfer to another body before Sasuke can be brought to me, contingencies are already in place. The prisoners, Kabuto realized, but none of them are anywhere near a suitable host for you, Orochimaru-sama. Your power will be greatly weakened. For a time, yes, but, as I said, it matters not. Orochimaru shrugged. After all, 3 years are but a drop in the ocean that is eternity. What kind of person is Naruto-kun? Tsunade asked Jiraiya. 3 days had passed since Orochimaru's ambush. 2 had been spent healing Jiraiya's injuries. Aside from his left knee, the Toad Sage was fully recovered. The damage to his knee was too extensive for Tsunade to fully heal in the field. He was healed enough to travel, but she would need specialized medical tools to ensure that Jiraiya wouldn't walk with a limp for the rest of his life. I'm still figuring that out myself, actually. Jiraiya answered. Despite being his godfather, I only came into his life a few months ago, no thanks to Danzo. That war hawk is still alive. Damn it, I thought we'd be rid of him by now. Tsunade swore. We are, thanks in no small part to Naruto, but we're still sorting through the mess he left behind. Jiraiya gave Tsunade a summary of how Root was discovered and purged. He also told her about Naruto's contributions to Konoha's reconstruction efforts, and Neji's brutal execution. While Tsunade was horrified by the nature of Neji's death, she was also impressed by Naruto's medical knowledge. Keeping someone alive for 3 hours while brutally torturing them was no easy feat. Long story short, Naruto was put through absolute hell by Konoha, and the fact that he's still sane is a miracle of miracles. Hinata Haim certainly helped, but Kotaru-san, the academy head librarian, was of tremendous aid as well, though I'm not quite sure how. Naruto had given his approval for Sito to tell Jiraiya of his past, but the Toad Sage didn't have the chance to do so before leaving to find Tsunade. Before Orochimaru's invasion, Jiraiya was busy plugging every hole left by Danzo in Konoha's security network that he could find. From what you've told me, Naruto-kun's a saint to his allies but a devil to his enemies. Tsunade sighed, hoping that Naruto wouldn't think less of her for abandoning Konoha. She was 1/4 Uzumaki, making Naruto her last living blood relative. Family shouldn't be at each other's throats. Naruto knows you're related to him. Before the Chunin exams, he spent a lot of time studying the Uzumaki clan history, and Kushina-chan left him a family tree in the Namikaze vaults, along with several other secrets of the clan. Jiraiya sighed bitterly. When he asked me why his only living relative was nowhere to be seen, I had to tell him. He did not take the news well. He doesn't hate you. He respects why you had to leave, but I'm afraid he now partially blames the hell he went through as a child on you. You weren't there. In his head, he can rationalize why, but, in his heart, you weren't there when he needed you most. Tsunade fought back tears. I never should have left. And then what? You'd drown in despair fighting a war for people you couldn't bring yourself to give a damn about at the time. Sasuke gazed sharply at Tsunade. Not quite a glare, but close. You did what you had to do for your mental and emotional health at the time. Sure, going on a years-long gambling spree wasn't good for you either, but leaving Konoha when you did was the right call. Nice speech, kid, glad you got it out of your system now, because your new Anbu bodyguards aren't ones to be swayed by a few words. Jiraiya's smile didn't reach his eyes. Sasuke's face turned pale. I'm sorry, did you say bodyguards? I did. The Konoha spymaster's voice was harder than diamond. Orochimaru ordered Kabuto to capture you, not kill you. The treacherous snake was first kicked out of Konoha for human experimentation. When Hiruzen-sensei caught him, he said he was searching for the secret to immortality. Most of Danzo's records were destroyed in the Root Purge, but enough research documents survived for us to confirm that he and Orochimaru collaborated on several projects related to soul transference. From what we've pieced together, the snake invented a jutsu that allows him to take over someone else's body. He completely devours the victim's mind, gaining all their memories in the process, and he eventually remolds the new body in his image. Any unique traits of the bodies he possesses are retained and transferred to the next host. The Sharingan. Sasuke realized. Another lifelong goal of Orochimaru is to unlock the mysteries of nature and master every jutsu. Jiraiya paused to reflect on happier times, when Orochimaru's ambition could be viewed in a far more benign light. The Sharingan is essential to that goal. Years ago, my spies witnessed a fight between Orochimaru and Itachi. Since Itachi is still himself, I'm sure you can guess how that blunder ended. He couldn't handle my brother, so now he's after me. Great. Just great. Sasuke shouted. Does this immortality jutsu have any drawbacks? Maybe. Jiraiya sighed. According to Danzo's notes, Orochimaru must wait at least 3 years after possessing a body before he can transfer to another one. Danzo speculated that overusing the jutsu weakens Orochimaru's soul, or even cripples it permanently, and that 3 years in one body ensures that his soul will be rested enough to retain its full strength during the transfer. But even then, Orochimaru will still be weakened if he transfers to a body that can't handle his full power. It's a defense mechanism built into the jutsu to prevent him from burning out a body before he can switch again. Sasuke kicked a pebble down the road. Does Orochimaru have to transfer to a new body once his 3 years are up? The notes we managed to recover don't say. If I had to guess, I'd say no. Jiraiya speculated. There aren't many people around with bodies that can withstand Orochimaru's full power, so it stands to reason he'd want to spend as much time in an ideal host as possible before moving on. Even if I'm wrong, these research notes are years old. In the time since, Orochimaru might have found ways to reduce or eliminate his immortality jutsu's flaws. The rest of the trip back to Konoha occurred in silence. At Jiraiya's request, Tsunade used a henge to disguise herself before the trio reached Konoha's gates. His knee had been healed enough to travel, but he needed immediate hospitalization to avoid permanent damage. The last thing Jiraiya needed was to be delayed by the massive reception Tsunade's return would instantly spawn. Through his spies, the Toad Sage sent a message to Asuma requesting that Konoha General Hospital's staff be discreetly notified of Tsunade's arrival. The medical ninja running the hospital had no problems agreeing to Jiraiya's desire for discretion. He was a hero of Konoha, as was Tsunade. Once Jiraiya was on the operating table, Tsunade wasted no time in refining her earlier work on his knee. The surgery took only an hour, but, due to the high volume of blood involved, Tsunade looked like she'd been through a war. Tsunade-sama, please get some rest. The chief surgeon on duty had seen just how badly his idol struggled with her hemophobia during the operation. Not yet. Tsunade growled through gritted teeth. There is another patient whose treatment can no longer be delayed. After cleansing and sanitizing herself, Tsunade opened the door to Naruto's room. The Namikaze Lord was sleeping peacefully, due in no small part to the Gorgon blood administered earlier. While the sanguine miracle fluid could not restore his mind, it could preserve it. Furthermore, Itachi had shattered Naruto's mind in a manner prone to self-recovery. The rogue Uchiha had no way of knowing that Tsunade would return, so he trusted in Naruto's sheer willpower and Uzumaki heritage to reverse the damage he inflicted. With Gorgon blood, Naruto's will and genetics, and Itachi's mercy all working in her favor, Tsunade needed less than 20 minutes to reverse the damage inflicted by Sukuyomi. Naruto stirred, yawned loud enough to wake the dead, and fell back to his serene slumber. Now, I'm done for the day, Tsunade decreed before hauling herself to Hiruzen's office. As much as she wanted to run straight to what was left of the Senju clan compound and crash face first into the biggest bed she could find, she needed to meet her sensei and hash out the details of the succession. The next morning 7 a.m. Naruto's eyes opened, and he quickly blinked several times to rid them of the crust that had accumulated during his coma. As his vision cleared, he noticed a single visitor in his room, though his superhuman hearing alerted him to 3 other voices just outside his door. Had a good nap, sleepy head. Enko smiled, her light brown eyes glittering with joy. I suppose I did, Naruto answered. Enko's demeanor put him at ease. She would not be so relaxed if Itachi and Kisame hadn't been repulsed. As much as I'd like to ask how long I've been out and how Sasuke is doing, there's something else that the two of us have been putting off for quite long enough. Damn right, Anko chuckled. You have no idea what I had to promise Hinata to get her to agree that I'd be the first one in here. Tsunade-sama ordered that you only get one visitor at a time, and each of us can only stay for 15 minutes tops. Sajiraya brought Tsunade back without me, huh? I'll have to hear how he managed that since he admitted that he'd never be able to do it alone. Naruto mused for 1 second before turning his gaze to the very hungry purple-haired sadist in the room. He barely managed to sit up in his bed before Anko pounced on him like a cobra and claimed his lips for her own. Naruto was forced back to his original position by the impact, but he didn't care for an instant as he returned the fiery kiss with a passion of his own. His arms wrapped around Anko's back, preventing her from moving as his tongue entered her mouth. The shunned snake Yukai and the forsaken Jinchuriki spent the entirety of the remaining time allotted to Anko expressing the depths of their feelings to each other. All too soon, the stopwatch given to all of Naruto's visitors by the hospital staff began beeping, and Anko slid out of her lover's grasp. Don't be a stranger, Naruto, she said before leaving. Moments later, Hinata entered the room. Anko passed the test, I take it? Naruto asked rhetorically. Such as it was, though given how beneficial you were to her emotional health it would have been the height of cruelty to refuse her. Hinata sighed contentedly. With Anko ne-san, 3 of your 6 wives are now spoken for. Haku ne-san is already a member of the Namikaze, and I will follow upon our marriage. Can the same be said for Anko ne-san? This was one of the agreements Naruto and Hinata had made regarding his harem, while Hinata had final say on which wives would become a part of it, and how many would be able to join. Naruto reserved the right to decide which of his 2 clans his future wives would join. Haku was already a Namikaze by blood, and Hinata had insisted upon joining the Namikaze clan so she could be as close to Naruto as possible, but the other 4 wives' positions were his to determine. No, Anko will be joining the Uzumaki clan. She's told me that she has a strong secondary affinity for yin release. Since that's the parent nature transformation of Fuinjutsu, it will be essential for resurrecting the Uzumaki. I'll have to see if the Namikaze blood transfer ritual can be refined to target specific nature transformations. At present, my Uzumaki genes are suppressed by my Namikaze ones. If I can assimilate Anko's yin release affinity, it should jumpstart my dormant Uzumaki DNA. I was wondering why you were struggling so hard with your Fuinjutsu training despite having the perfect bloodline for it. Naruto did not tell his fiancée everything about his life without being prompted, and Hinata viewed this as healthy for their relationship. Was it easier to use seals before your Daiyoukai powers awakened? Much easier. It used to be less than child's play for me to cast privacy seals, both the basic and advanced versions. After hearing Naruto say this, Hinata's lavender eyes widened. The basic privacy seal, which prevented eavesdropping, was a Chunin-level technique. The advanced version masked the user's presence entirely unless they left the affected area, and was considered a Jonin-level technique. Even for Jonin, flawlessly casting an advanced privacy seal was very difficult unless they trained extensively or possessed an affinity for Fuinjutsu. For the immediate future, I am rejecting Kiba-chan's candidacy for your harem. While you were comatose, she said something not lightly forgiven. Hinata repeated the short, very heated argument Kiba and Anko had on the day Naruto lost consciousness. Damn it, Kiba-chan. Naruto cringed, fully agreeing with Hinata's decision. If he'd been conscious to hear that exchange, the Namikaze Lord may well have rejected Kiba himself. Rough estimate, how long is Kiba-chan in the doghouse? Naruto couldn't resist the joke. A few months, at the very least. Hinata laughed lightly in response. She must demonstrate that she is of noble character before I will reverse my decision. I will grant her every opportunity to do so, until the day we are wed. So be it. Naruto acknowledged just before Hinata's stopwatch started to ring. The Hyuga princess gave her fiancé a quick kiss before leaving the room. Haku was Naruto's 3rd visitor for the day, but the love she held for her future husband was nowhere to be seen on her face. You almost died, she said coldly. Yes, Naruto confessed, his voice equally bleak. You need more training, Haku continued. With both Kurama's power, and my sweetened jutsu, Naruto agreed. Fuden he could master on his own, but Haku was his best candidate to learn Suiden from now that Zabuza was a team leader. We begin when you are discharged. Haku curtly ordered. Not even a full minute had passed before she left Naruto's room. Before Tenten, Naruto's final guest for the day, could enter, Haku removed her still active stopwatch and placed it on Tenten's wrist, nearly doubling her allotted time. The head nurse on duty saw the act, but a frigid glare from the last Yuki banished any thought of admonishing the girls from her mind. Tsunade's word was law to all Konoha medical staff, but, in that instant, Haku's eyes blazed with the immutable will of the Shinigami himself. Tenten had nearly killed herself for Naruto's sake. The time limit could go fuck itself as far as Haku was concerned. The nurses said Tsunade-sama would be by to assess you once our time was up. How are you feeling, Naruto-kun? Tenten asked. Between the Gorgon blood and my body's natural healing properties, I feel great physically. Mentally, I feel refreshed as well. Naruto answered. In my fight with Kisame-san, Tokujin was badly damaged. Is there any chance you can repair it? Tenten chuckled. Funny. Asuma Dono had the same thought. She pulled a storage scroll from her pocket and withdrew the newly repaired Tokujin from it. Naruto's joyous scream was silenced before it could begin by the painful look on Tenten's face. Please, Tenten-chan, tell me everything. Naruto requested after connecting the dots. Even with Hephaestus' help, Tenten wouldn't have been able to repair Tokujin without the proper materials. The Namikaze vault had more than a few Yukai body parts preserved for such emergencies, but Tenten didn't know that and wouldn't have survived the journey into the vault if she did. Good thing Haku-san gave me extra time. Tenten praised her teammate before giving Naruto the information he sought. Wait, what? Naruto blurted out after Tenten said she used Kongo Fusa. How do you know that jutsu? Tenten's answer caused Naruto's brow to furrow. Tenten-chan, did that book explain what Kongo Fusa means to the Uzumaki clan? And no, Tenten stuttered, caught off guard by the intensity of Naruto's gaze. It was a soldier's war journal written during the First Shinobi World War by a Konoha shinobi. The author only noted how powerful the jutsu was and drew the hand seals needed to cast it. Not just Kongo Fusa, but a few other Uzumaki techniques as well. Naruto's gaze softened slightly, but it was still harsh enough to unnerve Tenten. Kongo Fusa is a rite of passage for all Uzumaki clan members. Just like the Gokaku no Jutsu is for the Uchiha clan, and Uzumaki has to be able to use Kongo Fusa to be considered an adult. I'm so sorry, Tenten yelled. Trampling over Naruto's clan traditions was the last thing she'd ever want to do. Don't worry about it now. You didn't know, and, strictly speaking, it's not forbidden for outsiders to learn Kongo Fusa. Naruto reassured the flustered weapon master. That said, you do need the approval of the clan head, which is me at the moment. Traditionally, someone not of the Uzumaki clan would need to fulfill two conditions to get that approval. What are they? Tenten asked with steel in her voice. First, you have to demonstrate that you have enough chakra to safely use Kongo Fusa for a sustained period of time, at least 5 minutes. I'm not worried about that. You're a demigod, and you're only 13 years old. If you don't have the necessary chakra reserves now, I know you'll develop them with time and training. Naruto paused for nearly half a minute before continuing. The second condition is much more sensitive. The clan head can demand any price in exchange for teaching Kongo Fusa. Whoever wants to learn Kongo Fusa must agree to the price demanded, no negotiations allowed. The price is enforced by a blood seal applied before the jutsu is taught. If the outsider refuses to pay the price, or tries to weasel out of it in any way, they die instantly. Tenten's eyes gradually widened as Naruto explained the second condition for learning Kongo Fusa. By the end of his explanation, they were all but leaping out of her head. Having said that, I, as the current lord of the Uzumaki, reserve the right to alter or eliminate clan traditions as I see fit, especially since I'm the last known survivor of the Uzumaki clan. We can do without the blood seal this time. I'm going to demand my price here and now, and it won't require anything from you that you are incapable of. What's the price? Tenten asked warily. For the next 20 seconds, close your eyes. Naruto ordered. Tenten obliged, and, for 19 seconds, nothing happened. At the end of the 20th second, the granddaughter of Hephaestus felt Naruto's arms wrap around her in a fierce embrace. I don't need to hear how the rest of your fight with Cudin-san went. Not here. Not now. You're here, you're healthy, and, right now, that's all I care about. Naruto cried softly. Tenten wordlessly returned the hug, and the pair remained embraced until the second of the two stopwatches started ringing. She left the room, and nearly collapsed in pain seconds after closing the door. Tenten's reckless absorption of Cudin's Yuki had consequences. The nearly unbearable pain she suffered while assimilating it into her own chakra still racked her body. Medusa's blood had substantially lowered the pain's intensity, but she still felt like red-hot knives were piercing every inch of her body. When Team 9 had returned to Konoha, the medical ninja at Konoha General Hospital had determined that Tenten's chakra pathways had been stretched nearly to the point of bursting open by Cudin's Yuki. Medusa's blood ensured that there would be no permanent damage, but that would only be the case if Tenten didn't use chakra at all until her chakra network had completely healed. The medical ninja on staff before Tsunade's return lacked the skill to accelerate Tenten's recovery. Tsunade had been briefed on Tenten's case, but it was a low priority for her until she healed enough patients to rid herself of her hemophobia. For now, she booked Tenten for a follow-up appointment in 3 weeks. Now alone in his room, Naruto sent a pulse of chakra into Kurama's seal. The gate opened, and a sliver of the tailed beast's chakra emerged from it. Naruto savored the chakra's power as he circulated it through his body. I can you use your power safely again now, Kurama-sensei. How long was I out? 3 weeks. I had hoped to use the time you were unconscious to teach you more of what can be done with my power, and your Yuki, but your mind was too badly damaged. Kurama sighed. We'll make up for the lost time soon enough. Naruto declared. Before the end of the month, my goal is to be able to use the zero-tail state for at least 10 minutes every other day. The zero-tail state can be any amount of my power below what is needed to form a tailed cloak. I assume you are referring to the highest amount of chakra possible before a tailed cloak would be created. Naruto sent an impression of approval into the seal to answer Kurama's question. If we were training without interruption, I would say that your goal is feasible, but with Haku-chan's Sweden training regimen to consider as well you will need 2 months. Kurama was frustrated at the slow progression of Naruto's training, but she had to accept that she was not Naruto's only teacher and his other mentors had skills and abilities he needed to master as well. Haku-chan will have to make do with a cage bushin. One created with half of my chakra should be more than sturdy enough to handle everything she throws at it over the course of a day. All that construction work has made your cage bushin rather durable, Kurama allowed, but using one for training will likely offend her. I do not wish to see the relationships with your mates suffer because of your training. Yeah, there will be hell to pay for this, Naruto groaned, but Haku-chan needs to get used to it anyway. When the time comes, one body won't be enough to satisfy all of my mates' needs. You dog. Kurama cackled. Naruto's reply was halted by the sound of his door opening. 1,000 emotions warred within his heart as Tsunade entered the room. Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki. Tsunade said solemnly. Tsunade Senju-san. Naruto replied neutrally. The response tore at Tsunade's heart. She prostrated herself on the floor. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If I had known you were born, what you were going through, I would have returned in an instant. The slug Sanin cried. But didn't you know, so you didn't come, and I suffered. Naruto answered without scorn, merely stating the facts. From what Jiraiya told me, you had your own demons to fight. Living with you before you conquered them would likely have been its own brand of hell. I don't hate you, Tsunade-san. Maybe things would have been better if you were here, maybe they would have been as bad, or worse, in a different way. I don't deal in what-ifs. You're here now, and, as far as I'm concerned, there's no bad blood between us. Tsunade rose off the floor. There's not. Jiraiya seemed to think there was. I was pissed when he told me why you left, but then I had time to think about it. Naruto clarified. You had a very good reason to leave when you did, and I wasn't even born yet. I wouldn't be right to blame you for what happened to me when you didn't even know I existed because you were dealing with your own grief. Running away from it, you mean? Tsunade scoffed. To think it took an Uchiha, the Senju's sworn enemy, to show me how lost I had become. Jiraiya brought Sasuke with him to persuade you to come back here. It was going to be me before Itachi knocked me out. Tell me everything. Naruto pleaded. After hearing the story, Naruto laughed in amazement. Glad to see Sasuke put Kabuto Tem in his place, and with my father's jutsu, no less. If anyone besides my mates and their children was going to learn the Rasengan, it would have been him. Naruto collected himself before looking at Tsunade with a 1,000-yard stare. Before we can bridge the gap between us, you need to speak with Kotoru-sensei. Take Jiraiya along with you and tell her I've given permission for both of you to hear all about me. Kotoru isn't her true name, I take it. Tsunade noticed the emphasis Naruto placed on the head librarian's name. Nope, but that's not my secret to tell. Naruto smirked. Without her, Konoha would not have survived the invasion. Keeping her privacy is the least I can do for her. I see. Thank you, Naruto-kun. After saying that, Tsunade left the room. Inuzuka clan compound 8 a.m. Okawa-san, Akamaru and I mastered the Kiba's declaration died on her lips seconds after she entered her clan's main sparring hall. Tsume had told Kiba to meet her here after she completed her morning training. The vast hall, typically filled with dozens of Inuzuka members honing their skills, was empty except for the Inuzuka clan head, her daughter and Akamaru. Akamaru-kun, return to Kiba's room. Tsume ordered. The ninja hound leapt out of his partner's jacket and left the hall. Tsume was seated on the floor. An oiled rag with numerous rust stains and a wedding stone lay to her left. To her right were two wooden practice swords. In her hands, Tsume held a katana. With the rust wiped off, the sword's silver blade was beautiful to Kiba, as were its golden crossguard and pommel. Light brown fabric was tightly wrapped around the sword's hilt, making it impossible to see what color the hilt itself was, but Kiba knew from her Inuzuka history lessons that the hilt was deep brown in color. Okawa-san, it that our clan's ultimate treasure. Kiba spoke with tremendous awe. Yes, Kiba-chan. This is the Yukai blade Tesseiga Dono. Our clan's founder, Inuyasha-sama, inherited him from his father. When he married and sired the first seeds of the Inuzuka clan, he gave his firstborn Tesseiga Dono when he came of age. Each head of the Inuzuka clan has tried to wield Tesseiga Dono ever since, some with much more success than others. Tesseiga chooses his owner. Kiba recalled. I've never seen you use him before. Does that mean you weren't chosen? It does, Tsume grunted. Tesseiga Dono is very picky about who he acknowledges. I wielded him in his dormant state for the entirety of the Third Shinobi World War, and he never shifted into his true form. If I had to guess, it has less to do with the worthiness of our clan and more that Tesseiga Dono is still mourning the death of Inuyasha-sama and prefers to be left alone. Right, Kiba growled. Inuyasha-sama was done in by that thunder tiger bitch Cudin. I get that we never went after her because it was Inuyasha-sama's last request, but if I ever see her I'll tear her apart. Ha ha ha, Tsume howled. You'll tear apart someone who killed our clan's founder. Even counting that Inuyasha-sama didn't have Tesseiga Dono at the time and was on his deathbed, he still put up one hell of a fight before Cudin killed him. She was covered in wounds by the end of the duel. Kiba's eyes became saucers. What do you mean Inuyasha-sama didn't have his sword? Cudin and Inuyasha-sama fought 52 times over 1,000 years. It was only during the 53rd duel that Cudin finally managed to kill Inuyasha-sama. By then, Tesseiga Dono had long since been handed down. The clan head at the time tried to give Tesseiga back to Inuyasha-sama for that final battle, but he refused. Tsume replied while inspecting Tesseiga's blade for any flaws. At the last, a dog can only fight with his own claws and fangs. Kiba quoted an Inuzuka clan axiom. Tesseiga was no longer his to wield. That's right, but it's my hope that you will be the next one to wield Tesseiga Dono. Tsume finished her inspection, and placed Tesseiga back into its sheath. Kiba's jaw hit the floor. What? There are dark days ahead, Tsume said grimly. First the recent invasion spearheaded by Orochimaru, and now there's a war with Iwa on the horizon. Several Inuzuka Jonin had been dispatched toward Iwa as scouts. Very soon, we will need Tesseiga Dono's power. You are next in line to inherit him. Might as well take him now since he won't acknowledge me. But I'm not worthy. I'm not ready. Kiba stuttered. Tsume smiled. Neither was Inuyasha-sama, at first. I have faith that you will earn Tesseiga Dano's favor, just as Inuyasha-sama did. To that end, today you get your first lesson in Inuzuka Kenjutsu. Carefully laid Tesseiga on the floor and then flung one of the practice swords at Kiba. The Inuzuka heiress barely caught the sword before Tsume was upon her. Wow! Kiba screamed after a vicious whack from her mother's sword. 2 hours later, a very battered and bruised Kiba limped into her room accompanied by 2 Inuzuka Jonin with medical ninjutsu training. She groaned in agony as the Jonin healed her. It took them 45 minutes to complete their work. Shortly after they left, Tsume walked in holding Tesseiga. I hear you're having boy troubles. Need some advice. Shut up, ya damn hag. Kiba shouted. She didn't want to be reminded that Hinata had rejected her candidacy for Naruto's harem. She knew she crossed a line by insulting Anko, and she had apologized to both Anko and Hinata for it. When he woke up, she would apologize to Naruto as well. Tsume sat on the foot of Kiba's bed. Suit yourself, but Naruto Dano's declaration during the finals puts you in a rather unique position. Kiba's brow furrowed. What do you mean? All Naruto said was that he was the lord of his clan and that Neji Tem insulted Namikaze clan honor. Tsume sighed. I knew should have been more firm with you when you slacked off during your clan history lessons. You've got a firm grasp of the common knowledge, but the lesser-known portions of Inuzuka history, which, as my daughter, you're expected to know, clearly went in one ear and out the other. The founder of the Namikaze clan is Sesshomaru Dono, Inuyasha-sama's half-brother. Kiba's face paled, and she felt her heart start to break. Due to their use of dogs for battle and companionship, the Inuzuka clan was keenly aware of the dire consequences suffered by the offspring of incestuous couples. While other clans may resort to incest out of necessity due to near extinction or out of a desire to keep their bloodlines as pure as possible, incest was punishable by death for the Inuzuka. Normally, continuing your pursuit of Naruto Dono would put you in very deep shit, Tsume continued in a reassuring tone, but I've gone through the entire genealogy of the Inuzuka clan from Inuyasha-sama's children to now. It's been over 100,000 years since Inuyasha-sama and Sesshomaru Dono sired their respective clans. In all that time, their bloodlines have never crossed. From a genetic standpoint, you and Naruto Dono are near total strangers. At worst, the two of you are at opposite ends of a gigantic family tree, and even that's really pushing it at this point. Kiba nearly fainted from relief. Kami damn it, Okawa-san. You nearly gave me a heart attack. Tsume laid Tesseiga on Kiba's bed and stood up. Better you hear it from me than anyone else. We don't know how much Naruto Dono knows of Inuzuka traditions. He might refuse your affections because of your blood connection. Now, you have a way to claw right through that excuse. You're welcome. Kiba's brutal Kenjutsu training resumed later that day, but no amount of pain could remove the smile on her face. Konoha General Hospital 9 a.m., Kakashi's room. Kakashi opened his good eye and moaned in agony. Tsunade had repaired his mind, but even she could not fully restore his body in one sitting. Unlike with Naruto, Itachi was too desperate to hold back when using Sukuyomi on Kakashi. The copy ninja's brain was ravaged so severely that his body suffered from phantom pain even after the source of his agony was removed. How long? Kakashi asked Jiraiya once he noticed that he was not alone in his room. 3 weeks, the Toad Sage replied. Naruto was treated last night and will be discharged later today. Tsunade will be back with you in, at the very latest, 2 days to see what can be done about your lingering pain. She's prioritizing patients who will soon die or be crippled for life right now. She said to tell you that, pain or no pain, you're too weak to do anything more than patrol around the village for at least a month after being discharged. Ideally, you shouldn't even be doing that. Perfect, Kakashi grumbled, and just when we're about to go to war with Iwa too. All the more reason for you to follow the doctor's orders and get back in shape as soon as possible. Jiraiya stated. When you're up to par again, start putting Sasuke through hell. I'd be doing the same with Naruto tomorrow if Haku hadn't beaten me to it. What about Hinata-chan? Kakashi did not want to leave his third student in the dust. No need to worry about her. Hiyashi Dono tells me that she's been training non-stop since Naruto was attacked. Same goes for all the genin who took the Chunin exams and lived. Even Tenten-chan, who had to leave on a mission, got her own brand of training in. Good. Very good. Kakashi grunted before falling back asleep. Naruto's room. Naruto was meditating while waiting for Tsunade to sign his discharge papers when Sasuke entered his room, trailed by 5 Anbu who positioned themselves all over the room. Another 5 Anbu stood guard outside the room. Oh, this is rich. Naruto cackled. The Uchiha prince has a royal entourage. Shut it. Dobi. Sasuke yelled back. Thanks to these idiots I can't have any quality time with Sakura-chan and Ino-chan. At least you'll have plenty of time to train. Kami knows you'll need it after how our fight with Itachi and Kisame ended. Naruto's eyes narrowed before he brought up the next topic of conversation. Sasuke. Itachi used what has to be the grandmother of all genjutsu to knock me out. It trapped me in some kind of separate dimension where Itachi tortured me half to death. He asked what I'd done to you, and when I told him he seemed both shocked and relieved at the same time. That got me thinking that maybe he wasn't the one really behind your clan's destruction. I called him out on that, too, and he all but confirmed it. Sasuke's left eye twitched. So what? He gets a free pass for what he did just because it was on someone else's orders. Fuck that. Naruto put his hands up in a placating gesture. I agree, he needs to answer for what he's done, but we don't have the whole story. You owe it to yourself, and your dead clan, to hear him out before you kill him. Sasuke wanted to throttle Naruto for saying that, but he knew his best friend was right. What did you mean by a separate dimension? A plane of existence different than ours, Naruto explained. I know it sounds crazy, but Lord Sesshomaru's half-brother, Inuyasha Dono, and his friends once fought a Daiyoukai in a mirror dimension inaccessible to most mortals. Fucking perfect. Just one more thing to worry about. Sasuke swore. If one jutsu can bring people to or from other dimensions, there could be others. Tell me about it, we'll have to stay on our toes. Naruto concurred. Sasuke-sama, it is ill-advised to remain in an unsecured place for too long. The Anbu members' tone brooked no disagreement. Then let's go to the Uchiha compound. Sasuke sighed. The inner sanctum is heavily defensible, only one way in or out, and only someone with a Sharingan can open or close the doors. To this day, the last Uchiha wondered why his clansmen didn't retreat to the inner sanctum to protect themselves from Itachi. He assumed his brother did something to the doors to prevent them from closing the doors, but whatever jutsu he used to pull that off must have been temporary because they worked perfectly when he used the inner sanctum's training hall to master the Chidori. Maybe Itachi really did have support while wiping out the clan. I never got a chance to learn how powerful the Uchiha as a whole was, so even my brother might have needed some help. Sasuke's musings were interrupted by the Anbu's call to his comrades to move out. 3 weeks later. Hiruzen's office, 7 a.m. So, you're ready to take the reins as Konoha's next Hokage? Hiruzen asked gravely. I am, Tsunade answered with steel in her voice. I haven't stopped healing Konoha's sick and wounded since returning 3 weeks ago, but it's been a full week since I last froze at the sight of blood or had a nightmare related to blood. Safe to say my hemophobia is gone. Very well. Then may your time as Konoha's ruler be far more prosperous than mine, Godime Hokage. Hiruzen smiled. There are several orders of business that demand your immediate attention. Before Tsunade could ask what her sensei meant, Hiruzen left the room. As he exited, I entered the office, followed closely by Team Yumino. Finally. I was beginning to think you'd never run out of patience. The Yondaime Reikage smirked. You should be grateful she prioritized you before some of her other patients, Reikage-sama. Yama rebuked. The backlash of your jutsu was not as severe as the injuries suffered by some others in Tsunade-sama's care. I grunted in acquiescence, and both he and Yama turned to address Tsunade. Now that you've become Hokage, the treaty between Kumo and Konoha can finally be discussed in earnest. As can the alliance between Konoha and Kiri. Yama added. Kami. I miss the hospital already. Tsunade swore. It took over 4 hours to hash out the economic, military, and political agreements between the three nations, but by the end of it Team Yumino, and Tsunade were all satisfied that the deals agreed upon would be mutually beneficial. 2 of Konoha's best Fuinjutsu masters were dispatched to Kumo and Kiri respectively to create warp seals that would allow Kage and other important individuals to instantly travel between the three nations. I himself would escort one to Kumo, and Yama, Arashi, and Yusen would escort the other to Kiri. Tetsushi insisted on staying behind to improve diplomatic relations between Kiri and Konoha. Yama smelled bullshit but did not call his youngest daughter out on it. Tsunade could learn about Tetsushi's inevitable marriage to Choji on her own time. Once that discussion was over, Tsunade began reading the reports Jiraiya told her about involving Danzo's activities and the responses to them. Before she was halfway through, her fury was palpable. By the time she was done, the entire Hokage Tower was drowning in killing intent. Shizune, find Homura and Kaharu and inform them that I've requested their presence in my office immediately. Yes, Tsunade-sama. As Shizune fled the office to carry out her master's order, Tsunade did her best to get her anger under control. She must have succeeded, because the two surviving members of Konoha's civilian faction were confused upon entering her office, not terrified. That will soon change, Tsunade promised herself. You requested our presence, Tsunade Dono? Kaharu asked. Yes, I brought you here to discuss some concerns I have regarding Danzo's activities throughout the last 12 years. Tsunade threw the reports she read earlier at the traitor's feet. There's no damning evidence in any of those documents pointing at your involvement with Danzo's illegal continuance of route, but your names do show up more than a few times. At the very least, you knew what he was up to and did nothing to stop it. That's good enough for me. Tsunade stood up and fully unleashed her killing intent once more. Homura and Kaharu were once formidable shinobi who served directly under Tobirama, but that was decades ago. Any semblance of power or skill they once possessed had long since rotted away. Now, they helpless sheep before a wolf. Out of some misguided sense of camaraderie, Hiruzen-sensei may have been willing to spare you until you were caught doing something so stupid that there was no defending it, but I'm not. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. You leaked Naruto's Jinchuriki status to the civilians, the reports are quite clear on that. For violating the Sandaime Hokage's law, I sentence both of you to death. Tsunade flashed from behind the Hokage's desk in a blur of movement and punched Homura's head clean off his body. In the next instant, she delivered a devastating axe kick to Kaharu, crushing her body into paste. Anbu, clean this mess up, Tsunade ordered. The agents assigned to guard her office quickly removed the corpses from the office. One of the Anbu used a Suiden jutsu to remove the gore from the floor, walls, and ceiling without leaving a single stain behind. While Tsunade was accepting her position as Hokage, Iruka woke up in a cold sweat. That dream again, he gasped. Ever since the invasion, he'd had the same dream almost every night. He'd be on a beach and, hundreds of yards away, a gigantic pillar of fire would emerge from the earth and plunge into the sea like a missile. In response, a pillar of water equal in size to the fire pillar would erupt from the ocean and intercept the fire pillar. The two elemental masses would clash over and over again, shaking the earth and heavens alike with their battle. They were evenly matched, and their conflict progressed with neither side gaining any advantage. Some nights, the dream would start with the water pillar attacking first. On other nights, the fire pillar made the first move. The first dozen times he'd had this dream, Iruka had been unable to move or speak and could only watch as the elemental constructs waged war. More recently, he'd been able to move gradually closer to the battlefield. Last night, he'd made it close enough to speak to the primal constructs. Before he could get a single word out, the warring pillars ceased their endless combat and turned to face Iruka. The Chunin felt no danger from the pillars, but just before he could ask anything, the dream ended. What does it all mean? Iruka shouted to his empty apartment. That's it, time to get some answers. He had not forgotten Uriel's words from the day of the invasion, and he was no fool. Whatever this dream was, it was related to the two lineages Sito had spoken of. Before now, he'd been far too swamped with academy work to ask Sito about it. With Tsunade's return, many of the critically wounded teachers who had survived the invasion were now able to resume their duties. With his workload now lightened considerably, today was Iruka's first day off in weeks. And he knew just how to spend it. He went to the academy library, hoping Sito would be taking the day off as well. His prayer was granted as Sito began descending the stairs leading from the library's second floor just as Iruka was about to start climbing them. You have come to ask of your heritage, the goddess of monsters said with a smile. Yes, what did you mean when you said I honored two lineages? Iruka asked. To answer that, I must speak first of Kiri's most notable clan, the Yumino clan. Sito's cerulean eyes glowed with power and all doors leading into the library closed and locked themselves. Yumino. That's my surname. Iruka's eyes widened. And such a noble name it is. Sito smiled again. The Yumino clan is descended from my dear nephew, Poseidon, Grecian god of the oceans. Like any clan descended from a supernatural being, the Yumino are blessed with great power. However, their traditions made it nearly impossible for the clan to grow and prosper. For one to marry into the clan, they must prove themselves near equal in prowess to whomever they wish to marry. Poseidon ranks highly among Grecian gods, and the powers his children have inherited throughout the ages have made them near invincible in combat. The line is much diluted with mortal blood now, but even so, Poseidon's legacy ensures that many who seek entry into the Yumino clan are doomed to failure. So, one of my ancestors was part of the Yumino clan. That branch must have died out. Iruka guessed. Indeed, Sito confirmed, a sect of the clan dwindled to the point that only one woman remained. She had two options. Join another branch of the Yumino clan, or leave the Yumino behind and seek companionship elsewhere. Your great-great-great-grandmother chose the latter option. Her clansmen did not attempt to stop her, for she was one of many who left the clan because they desired love. Such a betrayal was often answered by Poseidon himself, who typically revoked his blessing from the defector in question. For reasons not known to me, my nephew did not exact retribution when your ancestor left the clan. Perhaps he foresaw a grander purpose that required him to stay his hand, or perhaps he chose to cease being the Yumino's enforcer and allowed them to live as they wished. What was my great-great-great-grandmother's name, and where did she go? Yumino asked solemnly. Her name was Anya, and she migrated to Kumo. Sito replied. She made quite a name for herself, and eventually fell in love. The clan she married into descended from one of the Norse gods, as is common for many clans that dwell within Kumo. Iruka recalled the contents of his dream. Let me guess, the Norse god of fire. Correct. Sito beamed. Logi. Wildfire incarnate. A giant whose capacity for consumption is so great that few gods are capable of matching him, let alone besting him. Would I also be correct in assuming that my mother or grandmother fled to Konoha in the chaos of one of the shinobi world wars? Iruka's parents had been killed during Kurama's assault on Konoha. If they had meant to tell him when he was older, they never got the chance. You would be, Sito said. It was your grandmother, whose name is not known to me, who came to Konoha disguised as a refugee. Logi's clan was disgusted by Kumo's actions prior to and during the First Shinobi World War, and took advantage of the Second Shinobi World War to defect. Kumo's other clans hunted them down, nearly to extinction, but your grandmother escaped. When she first arrived here, I sensed Anya's blood within her, but I also sensed that she meant Konoha no harm. Thus, I respected her privacy. She never introduced herself to me. All I know is that she kept the Yumino surname. Iruka sighed. If I'm a demigod twice over, then how did Mizuki nearly kill me? Sito's eyes narrowed slightly. Is it not obvious? The power of the ocean and the fury of the wildfire both dwell within your blood in equal quantity. For nearly your entire life, they have neutralized each other. During the invasion, you subconsciously drew on both gifts to protect the students. That is why your chakra replenished itself several times before my intervention. Now, you must choose. Fire or water, Poseidon or Logi. The stalemate between them will persist without end if they are left to their own devices, and their conflict will destroy you if a resolution is not soon achieved. No matter your choice, my opinion of you will not diminish. Opinion. Iruka echoed, not quite believing his ears. A question for another time. For now, you have enough to concern yourself with. Sito's eyes flashed again, and the library doors opened themselves. Recognizing the dismissal for what it was, Iruka left the library as he exited. Sito sensed Jiraiya and Tsunade's arrival. With a quick pulse of divine will, the goddess reinforced every inch of the library. She had no desire to repair her library a second time due to the fury Tsunade would inevitably unleash after being told the same sad tale Kakashi and Iruka heard a month ago. Iruka went to his old classroom. Enough teachers had recovered that they no longer needed to hold mass classes in the auditorium. Iruka hadn't been to his classroom since the day of the invasion, so he used the rest of his day off to repair the damage the room suffered, which wasn't much, and to alter his lesson plans to account for a much lower amount of students. When he was done, he went home, made a quick dinner, and went to bed both fearing and craving the dream to come. When Iruka's dream self manifested upon the beach, the two elemental pillars were stationary. The fire pillar stood at the very end of the beach, and the water pillar rested 200 feet away. As Iruka approached the pillars, they condensed into balls and exploded in a flash of white light. Iruka shielded his eyes from the sudden burst of light. When he opened them again, he was barely able to resist the presence of the mighty entities before him. To his left, a giant of a man with hair of crimson fire stood. His beard stretched far below his pectoral muscles. The giant wore nothing above his waist, so his immense muscles were visible to all. A gray-black loincloth woven from smoke preserved his modesty, and his leg muscles were just as potent as those on his upper body. Aside from his beard, the giant had a mane of flames sprouting from his skull. His fiery eyes shone like rubies. To Iruka's right, a being with the upper half of man and the bottom half of a great fish floated above the sea. A crown sat upon his head, and his silver mane and beard cascaded down, stopping just beneath his pectoral muscles. Bronze bracers covered in barnacles adorned his forearms, and he held a trident in his right hand. His eyes and mighty tail were the deep blue of the ocean. Logi-sama, Poseidon-sama. Iruka bowed. No, and yes. The two deities responded after Iruka completed his bow. We are echoes of the original Poseidon and Logi, traces of their divinity given form and substance. Poseidon clarified. We have the original's memories, and a substantial portion of their power, but we are not them. I doubt they are even aware of our existence. Logi explained. How is this possible? Iruka inferred from Logi's tone that these manifestations were a very rare occurrence, perhaps even the first of their kind. Water and fire share much in common. Poseidon began. In overabundance. Both ravage, both consume, and both destroy. But in moderation, they soothe, they nurture, and they create. Logi continued. Death and life, creation and destruction. Fire and water embody these concepts in ways no other element can match. When two bloodlines endowed with such primal forces cross, unfathomable possibilities are bred. We are one such possibility made reality. Poseidon concluded. We've spent your whole life trying to purge each other. Logi smiled as he recalled the many battles waged against Poseidon. Our originals are both more than a little prideful, a sentiment shared by us. The true Logi never met a body of water he could not disperse. Nor did the true Poseidon ever encounter a fire he failed to quench, though his nephew Hephaestus' flames came somewhat close at times. Poseidon affirmed. Ceto was right about us. This can't go on. Logi warned. The dreams are just the start. In its current form, your body can't withstand our power for much longer. Very soon, you'll be bedridden by incurable pain. After that, only death awaits. Neither of us desires erasure, but we agree on this. You have done nothing to earn oblivion by our hands, unwilling though it may be. Whomever you do not choose shall cease to exist. Poseidon vowed. Iruka looked at both deities, then between them, and finally at both again. He reflected on their words, on Ceto's words, and then he did what shinobi do best. He looked beneath the underneath. There's a way for me to keep both of you and not die, isn't there? Iruka shouted. Silence was his answer, and it spoke volumes. That's my choice. I want it all. I need it all. I was helpless during the invasion. Without your power to draw on, I would never have made it to Ceto, and things are only going to get worse. With all of your powers, I can make a real difference. I can protect my precious people. For a minute that seemed like hours, the two pseudo-gods were silent. Ha 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 h. Spoken like a true son of mine. Logi bellowed. You're gluttonous when faced with a choice, just as a wildfire should be. Your choice honors me as well. The sea loathes restraints of any kind. Poseidon smiled before Iruka could object to Logi's words. It is not impossible for you to contain both of us. However, Poseidon's smile faded. Know that you have chosen to walk a path of thorns. To wield both our powers, your chakra network must be disintegrated and rebuilt from the ground up. Iruka's eyes briefly widened, but he quickly mastered himself and stared at the two deities with a gaze harder than granite. Good eyes. We won't insult you by asking if you wish to reconsider. Assuming that you survive the overhaul of your chakra network, you'll be comatose for at least 6 months. Maybe up to a year. Logi decreed. Let us begin. Poseidon raised his trident, and the entire ocean rose and condensed into a basketball-sized sphere on its central point. Logi raised his left hand to the sky, and the heavens ignited. The blazing sky was similarly condensed into a baseball-sized orb in his raised hand. Best of luck, Iruka Yumino. Logi launched his fireball at Iruka in the same instant that a torrential blast erupted from Poseidon's water sphere. The dreamscape was shattered by Iruka's unfathomable pain. Noble Iruka, you brave fool. Sito lamented from her bedroom in the library's second floor as she sensed the gargantuan surge of divine power emanating from Iruka's home. She had long since cast a ward on his house that would mute his screams. No medical ninjutsu could relieve this pain. Please, survive. The next morning. Training Field 9, 8:30 a.m. Zabuza was struggling to fully control his new jutsu, Uja no Suiryu. The gigantic water dragon created by it was powerful, but sluggish. It also required him to remain stationary while firing it, which nearly proved fatal against Cudin. 12 seconds. That's a new record. Zabuza panted after his third giant water dragon created that day exploded into a downpour that flooded the training ground. He raised his right arm, and the water was drawn into it. The divine limb could partially absorb Suidan chakra from any jutsu. At present, the limit was 10%, but that would increase the more he used the arm's absorption power. The arm swelled to nearly 3 times its normal size after absorbing all the water. Zabuza sat down to meditate, accelerating the recovery of his chakra. Half an hour later, his chakra was fully restored, and he was about to use Uja no Suiryu a 4th time when Medusa arrived. Training to master your new water jutsu. The Gorgon smiled. You don't seem to be making much progress. Perhaps you should emulate Lord Naruto's preferred form of training. Kage Bushin, you mean? Zabuza raised an eyebrow. During the Namikaze blood transfer ritual, he had obtained a powerful yang affinity from Naruto that nearly rivaled his own Suidan affinity in strength. Gotta admit, that jutsu scares me. Over the years, tons of Konoha shinobi have killed themselves over using the technique. Your fear is no longer justified. Medusa admonished. The Namikaze blood rite has rewritten several aspects of your genetic code. I know not how powerful you were before the ritual, but the traces of its magic that I can sense tell me all I need to know. Your chakra reserves have expanded by, at least, an order of magnitude. Yes, and that's part of the reason I'm having so much trouble. Zabuza grumbled. With all this extra chakra, my control is shot. I've been making great strides toward regaining my previous level of control, but there's still a long way to go. All the more reason you should train while using Kage Bushin. Do not create dozens, as Lord Naruto does. Limit yourself to 3. With your chakra divided into 4ths, the clones will have more than enough power to aid your training, and the reduced amount of chakra will it easier for you, and your Kage Bushin, to maintain control. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Zabuza followed Medusa's advice and created 3 Kage Bushin. You know what to do. The clones nodded and left the immediate area to continue the training. After they left, Zabuza turned to Medusa. You didn't come here just to give me advice, what's going on? Medusa produced a scroll and handed it to Zabuza. Orders from Lady Tsunade. With the exception of Tenten, who is still recovering, Team 9 is to depart for Iwa and rendezvous with our scouts at the border of Konoha and Kusaga. Over 100 Iwa spies have already been captured. Many killed themselves before they could be fully restrained, and the scouts are having less than satisfactory results interrogating the remaining spies. Ibiki and Anko are preoccupied in a different theater of war, and Lady Tsunade is unwilling to deploy Skikaku or Inoichi, lest she risk leaving Konoha ill-defended. She hopes the Devil of the Hidden Mist will live up to his reputation. Zabuza read the scroll, which was a mission report from the scouts detailing which interrogation methods had already been attempted and how successful they were, not at all. He then wrapped the scroll in 10 explosive tags, threw it 200 feet into the air, and used a hand seal to detonate the tags. The ashen remains of the mission report rained down on him and Medusa. Her snake hair hissed in frustration. A bit more caution next time, if you please. Medusa used a water spell to cleanse her hair. Sure. Zabuza grunted. But, while you're here, there's something else I'd like to talk about. Medusa quickly checked her hair to ensure no ash remained, then turned her full attention to Zabuza. I was conscious, barely, at the end of our fight with Cudin. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, but could hear, and feel. Zabuza's eyes narrowed. Medusa's voice quivered slightly. It was a necessary violation. I will not apologize for saving your life, but know that I would never invade your person without dire cause. I'm not mad at you. Like you said, it had to be done or I would die, but those kisses brought up some very painful memories. Zabuza sighed bitterly. Medusa waited with bated breath. 5 minutes passed with the two just staring at each other. More years ago than I care to remember now, I started a rebellion in Kiri. Zabuza broke the silence. Yagura, the Yondaime Mizukage, was once a shining beacon loved by the people of Kiri, but at some point he snapped. He began a horrific civil war between those with powerful bloodlines and those without them. The Kiri Academy's main graduation requirement was also altered during this time. Having to demonstrate mastery of Suidan chakra was still needed to pass, but, more than anything, you were expected to kill at least one of your classmates. Medusa suppressed a gasp. She had murdered thousands in her day, but most were complete or near total strangers. She could barely contemplate having to kill someone meant to be a comrade. I was particularly unlucky in my graduating year. Zabuza continued. I was the best in my class, by a huge margin. Not because of any bloodline, but by sheer determination. My classmates all hated me for it, and even the teachers feared that my future superiors wouldn't be able to control me. So they changed the rules. Medusa surmised. They sure did, but I showed them. Zabuza punched the nearest tree, leaving a huge dent in its trunk. All of my classmates were guaranteed to pass if they killed me. It was a class with over 100 students. I slaughtered them all. And that's how you earned your title. A most impressive feat of battle. Medusa purred. Though she was horrified at the prospect of having to kill your friends, killing of any kind excited her. The academy headmaster certainly thought so. Zabuza smiled. He field promoted me to Chunin, skipping over Genin entirely, and immediately recommended me to be the next owner of Kubokiribocho. Its previous owner, Mangetsu Huzuki, had died during the Second Shinobi World War. The tricky thing with Kiri's 7 swords is that you can't wield them unless they acknowledge you. Any idiot who tries can count themselves lucky if all they lose is their hands. Someone who wants to wield one of the 7 swords is supposed to drip some of their blood onto it. If the sword drinks it in, you're good to go, otherwise, good luck in another life. And the headmaster neglected to inform you of that precaution, I take it. Medusa scowled. Bingo. Too bad for him that Kurokiribocho liked me. A couple years later, when another of the 7 swords was up for grabs, Yagura demanded that all current 7 swords wielders attend the succession ceremony, if you can call it that. When it was over, I went back to the academy to repay the headmaster's generosity. Too bad there was nothing resembling a pike nearby, or I'd have gladly stuck his head on it. Zabuza grinned at the memory. So you prospered, and eventually revolted against a corrupt leader. Medusa stated. Yes and yes. Yagura's civil war made no sense. It would only weaken Kiri if all the powerful bloodlines were destroyed. I was hardly the only one who felt that way, but most of the others feared my reputation. They thought I killed for the sake of killing, and didn't trust me when I said I was fighting for good of Kiri. My efforts to raise a proper fighting force were in vain, until Mei volunteered to join me. You speak of Mei Terumi, the current Mizukage. Medusa's hair hissed at the name. Zabuza nodded. She was a blessing to my efforts. Evidently, she was planning a coup of her own and had already made many connections vital to the cause. A lot of her allies nearly abandoned her when she said I would be the leader, but she won them over again by convincing them that my reputation was invaluable to the cause, and by promising them that she would be able to control me. That last part was no lie. Her Uden Jutsu are a natural counter to most Suidan Jutsu. I am not surprised. The Terumi clan descends from Lady Minerva, Roman goddess of wisdom and war. Medusa growled. She had no quarrel with Athena's Roman form, but her hatred of the Grecian goddess ran deep. Huh, well, the more you know. Zabuza marveled. At any rate, the rebellion progressed smoothly enough with both of us leading the charge. What we didn't know was that Yugura was a perfect Jinchuriki. Medusa's jaw dropped. A shinobi with complete mastery over the tailed beast sealed within them. My queen mother warned me of such warriors. They are comparable to the mightiest demigods Greece has ever known. Then I don't need to explain just how fucked May and I were in that fight. We knew Yugura was a Jinchuriki, but not that he was a perfect one. Zabuza shuddered. With the Sanbi's full power at his disposal, Yugura crushed us. We barely made it out of there alive. To this day, I don't know why he didn't chase after us himself or send a legion of Anbu to finish us off while we were still licking our wounds. May speculated that someone was manipulating him from the shadows, but I find the idea that anyone could control someone as powerful as Yugura flawlessly, for years, more than a little preposterous. Medusa gulped, guessing that the painful memories Zabuza mentioned earlier would soon be revealed. What happened next? May and I gathered what was left of our forces and decided to go dark until things cooled off. She made plan after plan on how to deal with Yugura. They were good plans, but he was too powerful, and still had too many people loyal to him, for any of them to have more than a fool's chance of working. I shut them all down. Then, in what I can only assume was an act of pure escapism, May tried to have sex with me. That wench. Medusa's hiss was a roar of rage. To be fair, something had been growing between us from the first day we met. Zabuza placated. But I was in no mood for romance on the night of my biggest failure. I tried fending her off. First with words, then with a sweetened shockwave. The second option got her attention, and we spent the next hour or so saying the most hurtful things we could think of to each other. Zabuza was crying now. In the end, I told her she could lead the rebellion from now on if she hated the sight of me so much and left. On my way out of Kiri, I found Haku right after she killed her father. Her Hyouten guaranteed that she wouldn't last 10 days before someone with far more skill than a drunken civilian came after her, so took her with me. The rest of my days before meeting Naruto-sama were spent raising money to hire enough powerful missing nin to take Yugura down. You know how that ended, and the rest is history. Medusa looked into Zabuza's eyes. You have shared your past, it is only proper that I do the same. For thousands of years, I served as the co-general of my queen mother's armies. Euryale was the other general, and Steno was right below us in rank. Through no fault of hers, Steno is more brute than strategist. In truth, she should have been placed somewhat lower in our ranks, but our queen mother is not above some degree of nepotism. As Steno is among the deadliest of my queen mother's children, none of her other subjects protested. It's ironic. Steno was feared for her bloodlust, but I was the one who was eventually banished from mother's queendom beneath waves for the act of wanton slaughter. Steno could always control her urges when need arose, but it took death for me to learn to do the same. Zabuza blanched. Who did you kill? Medusa laughed derisively. Who didn't I kill? My queen mother's realm is far from the only undersea nation in Greece. Many sea gods dominate the oceans, and I viewed all of them as inferior. I ordered hundreds of invasions into these realms. As co-general, none but my queen mother could command me to stop, and she did no such thing. Euryale hindered my efforts by reducing the forces at my disposal by half, but I was still a terror the likes of which the oceans had never known before, or since. There's no way the other sea gods took that lying down. Zabuza declared. Indeed, Medusa sighed, they banded together and petitioned my queen mother to bring an end to my madness. As powerful as she is, my queen mother could not stand alone against all the other ocean gods. Thus, I was banished to the surface. And that was enough to satisfy them. Zabuza was shocked that the sea gods didn't demand Medusa's head. The majority of the Grecian sea gods care nothing for the fates of those above the waves. Lord Poseidon is the most notable exception, by far. Medusa explained. No lesson was learned that day. To my eyes, one feast had been exchanged for another. I no longer had my army, but I never needed them. All that would change was the death rate. Medusa clenched her fists. I was a fool. On dry land, my queen mother could do nothing to prevent the other gods from sending their most powerful heroes after me. Many fell before me, and it became apparent that no mortal could best me without considerable aid from the gods themselves. And so a hero meant specifically to end you was cultivated. Zabuza realized. Perseus, son of Lord Zeus. Medusa confirmed. All Grecian demigods are endowed with superhuman agility and reflexes, and many possess at least some degree of superhuman strength. Perseus was blessed with an unprecedented quantity of these gifts. Only his great-grandson, Heracles, was superior to him in raw might. He sounds like a monster, but I've seen you in action and you've told me that what you're capable of now is way less than what you could once do. Divine physicality wouldn't have been enough to take you out. Zabuza analyzed. Not by half, but Lady Athena was more than prepared to compensate for the difference. Medusa spat the Grecian wisdom goddess name. She supplied Perseus with a polished shield capable of reflecting my stone gaze. Far worse, she informed him that I was in a precarious state. At this time, I was pregnant with Poseidon's seed. I required long bouts of rest as twin brothers grew within me, and my control over my powers was tenuous at best. Wonderful. Zabuza spat. If only that were all. Medusa groaned. Perseus also received aid from Lord Hermes, god of travel and messenger of the gods. He granted Perseus an adamantine sickle, a curved sword capable of severing my head in an instant. He also advised Perseus to seek an audience with the Graii, the Grey Sisters, another set of my Queen Mother's children capable of discerning that which is concealed to all else. The Graii told Perseus the location of the Stygian nymphs, who guarded 3 powerful tools of Lord Hades, a helmet of invisibility, a pair of winged sandals twin to those worn by Lord Hermes, and a sack capable of suppressing the power of anything stored within it. Thus armed, Perseus approached the island I called home. At the time, my sisters were visiting me, but not even they could see through the invisibility granted by Lord Hades' helm. I was in the middle of one of my many rests when Perseus entered my bedchamber. I awoke in the depths of Tartarus, the great abyss, where all enemies of the gods were doomed to eternal torment. I was cursed to feel all that I had wrought, all the suffering that had I inflicted upon the world. The despair of those related to my victims was now my own. The agony of my victims' wounds was now my own. Tears now flowed down Medusa's face. I know not how long I was subjected to my torment. At times, my sisters would come to inform me of notable historical events. From them, I also learned of the circumstances behind my death. At the time, I could not bring myself to care. Pain was all my mind could comprehend in those days. One day, the pain stopped, the torture stopped. I was brought from Tartarus to the Asphodel Meadows, a realm meant for those neither wicked enough to deserve Tartarus nor benevolent enough to earn Elysium, a realm of endless paradise. I'm guessing that's when Sito-sama showed up and told you that you'd be needed on the mortal plane again and that she'd successfully negotiated your resurrection. Zabuza asked. Indeed. At that time, mana became the source of my powers instead of divine will. Medusa sighed regretfully. My legendary prowess as a warrior was put to good use once more. It took little time for me to adapt to my new limitations. By the time of my revival, I was quite comfortable with them. So here we are. The failed rebel and the regretful murderer. Zabuza gave Medusa 1,000-yard stare. Truly, a cursed pair. Medusa returned the stare. For over 10 minutes, their eyes remained locked in place until Zabuza flinched. Usage. The Cage Bushin just finished their training, and Naruto-sama never told me the recoil that comes with the memories is such a bitch. With your new yang affinity, you can adapt to the recoil in time. Medusa promised. I have lingered too long. Sir Iruka is currently indisposed for reasons my queen mother does not wish to reveal, so now I must teach his class in his stead. Medusa flew toward the academy. 1 week later, Uchiha compound, 10:30 p.m. Sasuke left his clan's inner sanctum to get some air. There were too many ghosts in that building for him to be locked up in there all the time. Whoever had done the cleanup after the Uchiha massacre did a mediocre job, at best. The faded bloodstains scattered all over the inner sanctum were legion. Thanks to Ino and Sakura's efforts, he didn't suffer PTSD from seeing the blood of his clan, but the sight of bloodstains made him furious and foiled his attempt to concentrate on his training. I need to talk with Tsunade about getting a cleaning crew who knows what the fuck they're doing in there to scour the place clean. Then, I can get some real training done. Sasuke had tried to get an audience with Tsunade to request that very thing many times in the last month, but she was busy with war preparations and Kami knows what else. If only I could convince my Anbu guards to let me train in Training Field 7, I'd be golden. But no, too open they say, too insecure they say. Fuck them all. I never should have told them about this place. Sasuke was so preoccupied with his internal rant that he failed to notice when a flute started playing near him. He shivered once he did notice. The melody was haunting and promised inevitable doom. The 5 Anbu guarding the entrance to the inner sanctum froze in place. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and saw numerous distortions in the Anbu's chakra network indicative of Genjutsu. Just as he realized what was going on, his own movements became sluggish. The only reason he had not succumbed to the flute player's jutsu instantly was because his chakra yuki inherently resisted external interference. Before Sasuke could forcibly disrupt his chakra yuki's flow to completely purge the genjutsu, a man-sized spider web struck his body and wrapped all around him. With only his head and neck left uncovered by the web, Sasuke could do nothing as he was hoisted off the ground by a giant of a man with orange hair wearing clothes similar to Orochimaru's. In the next second, a neck chop forced the last Uchiha into unconsciousness. It's a shame we had to take Uchiha Dono out like this. If the durability of his skin is any indication, he would have been a most interesting opponent. Saken lamented as he massaged the hand he used to knock Sasuke out. Quit complaining. We got what we came for. Now, we need to get the fuck out of here. It won't be long before these Anbu shitheads are missed. Taiyuya shot back while applying chakra suppressing seals to nearly every inch of Sasuke's head and neck. Only his nose was uncovered to allow him to breathe. Some games are long and fun, others are short and boring. Oh, well. Kidomaru agreed while wrapping 10 more webs around Sasuke. It took too long for us to learn the Anbu's patterns and determine the best time to strike. Let us deliver Sasuke Dono to Orochimaru-sama as soon as possible. Jirobo said calmly before shunshining out of the Uchiha compound, followed closely by the other members of the Sound Four. The next morning. Tsunade's office, 5 a.m. Hokage-sama, what could be so troublesome that you dragged Naruto-kun and I out of bed so early in the morning? Shikamaru yawned, still half asleep from when the Anbu woke him up to tell him that Tsunade ordered him to report to her office immediately. Sasuke Uchiha has been kidnapped. Tsunade replied curtly. 2 hours ago, the morning shift of Sasuke's bodyguards found the late night shift dead and Sasuke was nowhere to be found. I have all the Anbu and Jonin I can spare at the moment trying to track the kidnappers down, but I'll have to recall them soon. I need all of them for the war with Iwa. Orochimaru. It's gotta be. Naruto slammed his left fist into his right palm. After he was discharged, Jiraiya had told him about Orochimaru's immortality jutsu and the requirements needed to use it. He's after Sasuke's body. I concur. And since I can't spare any Jonin or Anbu for more than a couple days, at best, the two of you will have to gather a team to track Sasuke's abductors down and save him. Tsunade ordered. Be extremely careful. We have no idea how many agents Orochimaru sent, but he wouldn't trust anyone other than his most elite forces for this mission. You have 2 hours to decide on your team and get them ready to move out. Naruto and Shikamaru each spent the next minute thinking about who they should bring for this mission. Just as Shikamaru was about to give his recommendations, Naruto beat him to it. Hinata's a must on this mission. Near omnidirectional vision for over 100 meters makes her the perfect scout, plus she's devastating at close range with her Juken and has a few Raiden Jutsu for long range. We'll bring Kiba-chan too. Sasuke's spent a lot of time at my place, so I've got some spare clothes of his there with his scent on it. Akamaru-kun will lead us right to him. With you as co-leader, maybe this won't be as troublesome as I thought. You took the words right out of my mouth. Shikamaru gave a small smile. I want Choji on the team. With the possible exception of you, he's the best heavy hitter out of anyone I trust on this. If we're talking pure taijutsu, no chakra or any other bullshit, then yeah, Choji's hits harder than me. Naruto allowed. Stack chakra on top of it and I'd outlast him with my huge reserves, but in the short term it would be an even fight. I have no problem bringing him on board. One thing though. If Choji-kun's coming, then we should take Tetsushi-san along as well. Shikamaru's brow furrowed. I get that Kiri and Konoha are allies now, but I don't feel comfortable bringing a non-Konoha shinobi on this mission. Plus, she's a Chunin too. Her authority would equal ours. 3 Chunin and 3 genin on the same team. That's too many captains, not enough common soldiers. Normally, I'd agree with you, but Tetsushi-san and Choji-kun are practically glued at the hip these days. If I've seen them walking around the village, I know you have. Naruto pointed out. Shikamaru shrugged, conceding the point. We'll tell her that if she wants to join the team, then she has to agree to follow orders. She can make suggestions, but we'll have the final say. While a lot of us have mid-range or long-range jutsu, none of us specialize in long-range combat like she does. Without knowing who we're up against, having a long-range specialist on our side could mean the difference between life and death. Naruto's eyes flashed with determination as he finished his argument. I still don't like it, but you're right. Shikamaru surrendered. If Tetsushi-san is willing to follow our orders, she's in.